Hello, everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. It is Thursday, July the 2nd, 2020. My name is Carey Holzman, and thank you for joining me today. And also a shout out and thanks to Michael Dane, Chris King, and Tony Wallow, and others who had contributed during the last previous video that I just did that was a few minutes long and didn't have an opportunity to shout out the thanks as I normally do for the folks out there supporting the channel. I appreciate that very, very much. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different because I'm sort of having to stick around waiting for some packages, very important packages, to arrive today that are holding up three computer systems from being complete. And that means I'm waiting on RAM to arrive for finishing up Thready. I'm waiting on a new cooler to come in for the Vantex build. I'm waiting on a wireless kit for the H370 boards. I'm going to show you how there's many different ways you can add wireless, whether it's a PCIe add-in card or a USB Wi-Fi dongle or internally M2 on some other boards that support that, and how all that works and how you can apply the right solution for you. So those projects are sort of put off until parts arrive, and I'm hoping, although I'm not sure exactly what parts are arriving today, I am hoping that some of those parts that enable me to to complete these builds will arrive. And I do hope I get interrupted during today's live stream with some deliveries. And that being said, today I want to talk to you a bit about what it takes to be in the IT business and what you can expect. But first, I've got to have a little of the elixir of life here and do things properly. Went out to my mailbox earlier today and I have this. This was in the mail and said, this is Happy Independence Day from Technique PR. I'm not sure who I've worked with what products from Technique PR, but it's a little USB adapter. It appears to be for connecting phones to computers. It just seems to be a straight through USB cable with lots of different types of USB for iPhone, Type C, Type A. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for sending it. And thank you to Tom Jackson. He's just contributed $7.77. He said, here's the common sense, Carey. And OG Gaming has contributed $10. John Baker with $1.99. And Psycho Killa 25 with £2 contribution. Thank you guys so much. Also, a special shout out to Tony Wallow, a very generous contribution through Amazon gift card, which has enabled me to order a bunch of different coolers. I have decided that well, I do enjoy the Scythe cooler. I think it's a great value. I'm having some difficulty getting the folks at Scythe to work with me in a way that incentivizes me to continue promoting their product for free. So there's no reason for me to remain loyal to Scythe when there could be other solutions out there. Scythe is meeting all of the needs budgetary wise and cooling wise, but the need where we're falling short is in supporting the channel. So I've taken about $500 or $600 and bought a bunch of coolers. I bought some Be Quiet coolers, some Noctua coolers, some coolers like from brands Up Here. Up Here is the name of a brand, never heard of them. And I'm gonna give everybody a chance to show me what they got. Regardless if they're a big brand or a little brand, if a cooler looks interesting, it looks different, then I'm going to experiment around because maybe there's another cooler brand out there that wants to work with me that is also a great value and easy to install and works well and is quiet, similar to the Scythe Mugen 5 that I like so much. And, if none of those end up being as good as Scythe, then so be it. I'm always going to choose the best component for my customers, regardless. In a perfect world, I would have these products that I endorse so strongly endorse me back in some way, shape, or form. So we'll see how that goes. And in the meantime, opens up opportunity for trying out some new cooling solutions that perhaps you're not going to see elsewhere because many of the coolers I selected are from, well, a couple are from companies I've never heard of. So I don't think they're going to be the ubiquitous big brands that you see in all the big tech channels that pay these tech channels basically to make a commercial for them. I do find it's kind of ironic that people will watch these large tech channels that, and it's not all large tech, but there are certain large tech channels, and you know the ones I'm talking about, that are paid to make the content that they make. And I find it kind of ironic that many of the people who watch those, they have ad blockers so they can skip the ads in the video when the video itself is nothing but a big ad for a product that was paid for by the company. So I just want you to bear in mind who's paying for the content you're watching. And in most cases on these very large tech channels, um, you're paying for it, whether you realize it or not. So that being said, I do try to keep everything independent here, and I like to work with potential sponsors of products I endorse. One of which, of course, is RoboForm, and I'm very delighted to have RoboForm become my first and only sponsor here on the channel to offer all of you 30% off of their subscription. If you're still writing your passwords down, or you have a spreadsheet or a Word document where you write your passwords down, it's horrible. It's not safe. It's not reliable. I strongly advise you to use a password manager. I've talked about this before. There's lots of other password managers besides RoboForm, but only RoboForm is supporting us here on this channel. So I think it's worth it for you to, at the very least, download the free version of RoboForm, check it out. Since they're supporting the community here, I think that's puts them a tier above when it comes time to decide which one you want to try. Give them a shot. And if you enjoy the product, by purchasing the product or even downloading the product, it shows RoboForm that they're having this channel is having an influential effect in bringing them an audience that they would not have otherwise received, which benefits me, which benefits the channel, which benefits RoboForm, and at the end of the day, I truly believe it benefits you. Once you get used to using a password manager, you will not want to go without one, regardless of who makes it. And I really like RoboForm's password manager. I've been using it over 15 years, and I've got no desire to find a replacement for it. It meets all of my needs, and I hope that RoboForm will continue to sponsor the channel. So with that, the links for RoboForm and the discount are all in the video notes below the video. I was just watching another tech channel that I enjoy here on YouTube is called Tech Deals. And Tech Deals, a husband and wife, they are they don't use their real names. I don't understand why, but the gentleman's name goes by Tech, and the lady's name is Rogue. And what they do is very similar to what I'm doing, except I don't see them working on any actual client machines and things like that, but they are advising people on what's a good value to buy, when is a good time to buy, and a lot of what they both say are similar things to what I say. We share a similar philosophy, and hopefully I can get them on and we'll interview them or something. Everybody's busy, but if I'm not broadcasting and you're looking for some content kind of similar to mine in the philosophy and the style, check out Tech Deals. I've got a link to their channel down below in the video notes below this video. So with all that out of the way, I want to get into what does it take to survive today as an IT tech. And again, as we talk about the hobbyists and the enthusiasts that primarily own all of the YouTube content creation that's happening here with regards to tech, with a few exceptions, the larger tech channels are generally theorists. They're not people who are in the field anymore. And the field is rapidly changing. You cannot say, well, I used to be a technician, therefore I still am. It doesn't work like that. In fact, I would argue that if you're out of doing any paid for work, if somebody's not paying you to do work, technical work, whether it's building a computer, repairing a computer, for 12 months or more, you're no longer a tech. You used to be a tech. And so much has changed and you don't know what's changed because you haven't been in it. But I will tell you, one of the frustrating things that comes with being a technician is support. The hardware that we're building today is so reliable, it's so good, it's very unusual to receive bad parts. It happens, but it's not normal. And then, of course, there's certain limitations when it comes to shipping. If you're doing like what I'm doing and I'm shipping computers, I can't control if FedEx drops a box or if UPS or whoever I'm shipping with mishandles the box in any way that can damage what was otherwise a perfect computer with no problems that was quality controlled. One of the issues that support can bring in is when a customer wants to argue with you. So a customer, and this happens quite often, and the worst part is if you're talking to another technician. That's the most difficult. But generally speaking, when a customer calls me for help and I advise the customer what to do, the general consensus that you would think would happen is they would listen to me. But what I end up getting, and you'll see this too when you're in IT, is customers who will tell you that your answer isn't right. They don't know what's wrong, which is why they called you, but they don't like your answer. And they'll tell you all the reasons they don't like. Well, it can't be this because of this. You can't do that. You simply cannot say, um, it's not worth trying the solution that's offered because you did something else. My strongest advice to you as a consumer calling for support is to humor your support technician. If it's somebody you're calling and you trust them, listen to what they're telling you. Even if you think it's not going to work, keep it to yourself. Do what they've asked you to do, and then if it does exactly like you thought it was going to do, keep it to yourself. That's not helpful in any way, shape, or form. And if you have that mindset, maybe you just need to figure it out on your own. In order for me to diagnose a system, I need the customer to work with me. I don't need the customer to think for me. I can't see it. I'm not there. So I have to rely on the information they're providing me. And if they don't provide me all the information, then we might be going through some unnecessary diagnostic steps. However, those unnecessary diagnostic steps are necessary for me because I have a process. And it's not a process I need the customer to approve of. I'm not asking for permission. The customer's calling me and asking me for help, telling the customer what to do, and the customer wants to give me all these reasons not to do it. And this is one of the most frustrating parts of being an IT tech, because if you were there, you would just do it yourself, right? You wouldn't argue with yourself, you would just do it. And when you run into a customer who's asking for help and then denying the help you're offering, what ends up happening is they get angry. They get angry because maybe you're treating them like an idiot. That's how they feel. You're questioning me and my basic knowledge or whatever knowledge I have. How dare you? No, I'm answering your support question and I have a diagnostic process, and I don't care if you're a lead technician or Joe consumer. I have the same diagnostic process for everybody. I don't change it up for people. And what ends up happening when people aren't listening, yelling starts. At least it'll happen on behalf of the customer. Grown adults yelling like children having tantrums. And I think that's a package. Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah, that's some of what I wanted, but not everything. So I want to get back to the psychology of it all. What ends up happening is, so a customer calls you, and the customer may be panicked. Customer may be just in a psychological state of panic and anxiety. And I'm not a psychologist. It's not my job. It's not what I do. I'm a computer technician. But it's very difficult to talk reasonably with somebody who's not behaving reasonably. They're not listening. They're frustrated with a problem, and they have in their mind, they've set up sort of an impossible achievement for you, which is to solve their problem while they're not listening and while they are in a state of mind that is not ideal for an efficient diagnostic process to take place. So we're all human. And if you have a bad attitude and you're angry and you're just attacking some innocent person you called on the phone for help, it's very much human nature for the other person to attack you back. It's very natural for people to defend themselves. And when somebody has that mindset, it doesn't matter what you say to them, they will twist it and hear something that they feel is an attack. And it is profoundly frustrating because at all times it's important to me to be a professional. But there are times where it's not possible to help somebody until they have calmed down. It's not my fault. Whatever happened isn't my fault. They called me, I didn't call them. I'm offering them help. They're twisting it around into that I'm insulting them when I'm just asking them to do something, and then they're telling me all the reasons why they shouldn't have to do that. Then I start getting upset because I'm not being listened to. You're wasting my time. You're pulling me away over what is probably a very simple solution that you refuse to exercise. So at that point, you have to learn how to deal with this as a tech. You've got to learn how to not take it personally. You've got to learn if you when I say you've got to, I mean if you don't, you're going to allow people to manipulate your mood. And if you want to give people permission to manipulate your mood, that's your choice. That, if you want to issue consent to allow somebody to call you and then ruin your day, and it's very contagious because now you're upset and you might be short and intolerant with the next person you interact with, whether that's your family or you're at the store, and now you've ruined their day. And around the wheel goes. At some point, somebody has to stop it. Somebody has to say, I'm not voluntarily participating in this game. I am not allowing you to manipulate or control my state of mind or my mood. And it's something that's practiced and practiced and practiced, but it is absolutely critical in IT, especially if you're self-employed, because if you mishandle it, you can lose customers. If you're working for somebody else, you can go and vent somewhere. But at the end of the day, if you lose a customer or something, the worst that's going to happen is you could lose your job. But that might happen anyway in today's market. You could be doing everything right and still lose your job. But it's another thing when it's your customer and it's your business. And of course, I'm not in business to upset people. I'm in business to help people. But oftentimes help gets twisted into being attacked. And that if you would have never offered to help them, you would have never been attacked. And I think that's quite interesting. However, it is still a choice on how I react to it, right? I can't control how they react to it, but I can control how I react to it. And this happens, you know, it, there's a gamut of reasons why this can occur. The other day I had a phone call. Customer calls me. I don't know this customer. Just calls me out of the blue, got my number from somebody, and said the data card, the memory card on my phone, it's corrupted or something, and I got pictures on it. How do I get the pictures off? I've taken it to this place. They couldn't do it. I've taken it to Geek Squad. They said they don't want to touch it. I said, well, I'm really not a phone guy. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what kind of phone you have or what operating system you have. But there's professional data recovery services. They're about $1,200. I know $300 data recovery will do the job, but I will tell you that memory cards and flash drives, even though they're smaller in capacity, they're more expensive to recover from because they require specialty tools and extraordinary lengths of time. And depending on why the data was corrupted or lost, maybe it's retrievable, maybe it's not retrievable. Now, customers don't want to hear this. Customers when they call you, they don't necessarily want to hear the truth. So I often feel like I have to apologize to customers after I've explained the process because I can tell from the tone of their voice they're not happy. The person says, "Well, doesn't the phone automatically back up my pictures anyway?" Well, some phones do, some phones don't. Depends who your carrier is. It depends if you've activated that service, or maybe you've downloaded something like Google Drive or something that automatically offers that Google Backup, but you have to instigate that. And of course, depending on if you have an iPhone or an Android, and of course what version and how you set it up, I don't know. I've never talked to you before. I don't know anything about you. So yes, it's possible that there are copies of your photos in the cloud somewhere, but I wouldn't be able to know that. I didn't set up your phone. I don't know who you are, and I don't know how this was configured. This is the first I've heard of it. But I will tell you that data recovery is expensive because it's extraordinarily time consuming and it requires very expensive specialty equipment. And nobody should ever need data recovery. Everybody should always have backups. So whether we're talking about, how reliable is a hard drive or a solid state drive, it doesn't matter. As long as you have backups, the reliability of these devices is irrelevant. Other than the inconvenience of having to replace it, there should be no data loss ever. If you're in a situation where you ask yourself, if my system didn't turn on this morning when I woke up, or if it was missing, somebody stole it from me, do I have my backup available and updated with everything I need? If the answer to that question is no, then it's time for you to make a backup. And you should be asking you should be asking yourself that question each and every day. And it sucks to have to deliver that information to a customer or a potential customer. They don't understand the complexity of what they're asking for. They think it's just get my stuff back. And unfortunately, the reality is it's rarely that easy. And then, of course, there's ransomware. I had a phone call from a gentleman who was affected by ransomware and hadn't backed anything up for 9 months. He followed my direction in buying a backup drive and followed my tutoring, which I don't normally do, and this is exactly why I don't do it, one time, and he never made time to do it again. And when he got ransomware, they wanted $500 for the decryption key, and they had to have it within 72 hours or the decryption key would be destroyed and no possibility for recovery. So when the customer calls me and says, "What do I do?" I say, "You restore from your backup." He goes, "Okay, but my backup that you told me to buy, that I did use following your instruction, I've only used it once and it was 9 months ago. And I've been writing a book and I will lose everything I've written and any work I've done for the last 9 months since the backup. Is there any way to fix it?" Probably not. However, if we wipe your hard drive clean and reinstall Windows and reinstall your applications and reactivate everything, and we restore from your backup from 9 months ago with all of those losses, the data loss, and just make you virus free again, you're looking at least at $300 and at least 8 hours of labor. And that's if I'm doing it off site. I'm not going to stay at your house for 8 hours waiting for all of this. If it were me, I'd pay the $500 ransom, get your data back, and back it up and chalk it up as a lesson learned. Which leads me to my next point as an IT technician. You will run into people who say they don't have any money. I don't have $500 to pay for ransomware. And yet you look at their house. You're there at their house. And their house is 10 times bigger or 5 times bigger or 3 times bigger than your house. You look at their car. Their car is 2 to 3 times more expensive than your car. You look at the in-ground swimming pool and the grand piano in the library of their house. My house doesn't have a library. And if I had to have $500, I could come up with it. So how can you, living in this big, beautiful home, tell me you don't have $500? So obviously it's nothing you can say out loud to the customer, but certainly it's got to be running through your head. Some people, you run into a couple of people. One is that they have the illusion that they have money. and that nothing is theirs, that they're renting or leasing, and that nothing, it's all about appearances, and that they may in fact not have $500. The other is that they are very wealthy, and the reason they're wealthy is because they get everybody to do things at a severely discounted rate, so they're not paying the same price as everybody else is paying, and they're not spending as much money, which keeps more for themselves, and they continue to grow their pile, which is just you acting as a charity at that point for somebody who doesn't want to support you back. They want your help, but they don't want to help you back in the way that they can. And so it's important that if you want to be successful and you want to sustain a business, that you identify these personality types and understand that sometimes customers cost you money. Sometimes it's better off to politely decline the work. I don't like to use the word fire the customer, but you make it so that it's worth your while to put up with that customer. So if this customer doesn't want to pay, just to give you an example, $500 to get the ransomware off of the computer, then my solution is pay me $750 and I'll do it for you. Because you know what I'll do? I will take that $750. I will pay the $500 in ransomware. I will do what the customer doesn't want to do, which is pay the ransomware, get the customer's data back, and I'm going to pocket $250 for my time to do it, and I will back the customer's data up for him so that if the ransomware comes back, they're not put back in that situation again. So when customers start dealing with you on price, the only way that it makes sense to bring your price down is to bring your service down. If you want me to do less, I can charge you less. But if you want me to do this job specifically in this manner, then the price I've given you is as cheap. That's my cheapest price. I don't play games with my pricing. This is the same price everybody pays. It's not like a car sale. You know, you're not catching me on a good day or a bad day. It has nothing to do with race or gender or anything else that like car sales. If you look at statistics, certain races and genders pay more on average than other races and genders. It's not fair. However, if there's a part of my service you don't want, for example, a warranty, if you say, can you do it at this price? I'll go, yeah, I can do it at that price if I don't warranty anything I do. So in other words, if you have any issues in the 1-year standard warranty period, any support calls or questions will be charged. It will not be included in any way. Well, people are usually not okay with that. So, well, there's no other way. If you want me to lower the price, I've got to take something out. So if you don't want me to take anything out, then that's my price. And if that's too much for you, I'm always around. Call me if you change your mind. There's a story about a barber and another salon opened right next door. And they said, haircuts, $5, big sign in the window. And the guy's like, I can't compete with that. I can't charge $5 for haircuts. I don't know what I'm going to do, and they're going to put me out of business. And he talked to a business consultant, and his business consultant said, relax. All you got to do is put a sign in your window that says, we fix $5 haircuts. So the gist of what I'm trying to get across to you is attitude plays a very important role in IT on several levels. One is dealing with difficult customers, and you're going to have difficult and demanding customers. They'll be demanding in that they expect you to be like a fireman. They will behave as though the most minor of problem is the effect of their house being on fire. And you need to get over there and put that fire out before more damage is done. There's that customer. You've got customers who expect you to do not only drop what you're doing and take care of them, but to do it cheap. Do it now, do it fast, do it right the first time. Give me a warranty. I'm going to call you with free support questions because that's what I imply from having paid you a year ago, is that now I can call you anytime and not expect to pay you anything. You've got to have a process in place so that you don't allow yourself opportunities to be taken advantage of like that. If you call a doctor's office, do you ever talk to the doctor on the phone? Does the doctor ever answer that phone? Because if you're self-employed and you're an IT tech, your customers have a direct line to you. You become sort of the Lazy, yes, I could read the instructions, but I'll just call Carey. And that's fine if they're going to pay you for your time. But oftentimes they don't think what they're doing should cost them any money. They feel like, well, I'm just asking you a question. Yes, but I can't help this other customer that you just interrupted. Will I answer your question? Now, you will run into customers who are very aware of that and will want to pay you, whether you ask for it or not. Unfortunately, these are the exceptions. Most customers, in my experience, will take advantage of you to the point that you allow. And for me, what usually ends up happening is I'll address the first question and like, I just have another quick question. Oh, and then when you answered that question, it leads them to three more. Oh, and while I got you on the phone, and here's the problem: the phone call ends up taking 45 minutes to an hour for what was one quick question. You have provided, or in my case, I have provided an hour's worth of information that I imagine the customer on the phone is not writing any of it down. They're just impulsively asking questions, and my answers are leading to more questions. And that when we hang up the phone, I wonder how much is that customer going to retain, and do they even remember why they called me? So I have to learn, or I've had to learn, how to politely say, I'm sorry, I've got to go. If you want to set up an appointment, if you want me to come out there to pick the machine up. But this is where we conflate, or the customers conflate tutoring with support. There's a certain amount of expected questions that are reasonable. How long will it take? How much will it cost me? Um, what's involved to some generic level? You don't have to get into detail, but what is it you have to do? Well, I got to take your computer over to my place. I've got to pull the drive out. I've got to clone it. I've got to put the new drive in, install any possible adapters, optimize it, tune it, clean it, and then return it back to you. Just kind of overview it. That's fine. It takes 20 seconds to explain that. But when customers are asking you how to do it themselves, they're effectively asking you to train them. I don't offer that, but if I did, you'd be paying for it. It's not part of the service. And sometimes customers cost you money. I know I just said this, but I want to keep reiterating it. When you first start out in business, you'll take on any job because I need the work. That's the justification. But what you fail to realize is getting yourself all tied up and wrapped up in that work is denying you other opportunities for better paying work from employers or customers that won't bust your butt so hard. People that will value what you do to a higher level. So at the end of the day, your value isn't what your customer decides it is. Your value is what you decide it is. And when you run into a customer who asks you for support and won't listen, or wants a discount for the same quality work that you do for everybody else at the same price, what makes them so special? If they're a regular customer who brings you a lot of work, different story. If I have a customer who's been with me for years and they want to call me and ask me questions, I am more than happy to spend as much time as necessary, because that's customer service, that's investing in my customer, and even that's probably a bad business decision. At some point, I should sort of lay down the law and say, okay, now you need to pay me. But generally speaking, for those customers that have been with me for years, I kind of treat them as friends, and I just endure it, writing my time off as marketing money, right? It's just the cost of business. And if a customer that's been with me for a number of years is doing that regularly all the time, then they need to pay me. But if it's, once a year, they're going to talk to me for an hour on the phone, that's fine. That's fine. I've had customers offer to take me to dinner, and customers offer to do things, and it's my way of politely declining because I don't have time. I simply just don't have the ability to go away and go out while work sits and other people are waiting. They're only thinking of themselves, which is again a purely natural human behavior. So what it boils down to a lot of times, especially with support over the phone, is let me log into it remotely and take care of it myself, so I don't have to deal with this resistance and this having to explain myself, which slows me down. Or let me get the computer here, let me work on it here, and let me return it to you. Having somebody not qualified, who you don't really know all that well, and trying to walk them through the process is extraordinarily painful. and frustrating. And it results in an immense amount of anger and resentment from both the technician and the customer. Customer is expecting you to just tell them, click here. It's rarely that simple. Customers might insist, this is going to be an easy problem for you. That's like a red flag. When I hear this is going to be an easy problem, I know I'm in for a doozy. Sometimes I'll talk with another technician and they'll be baffled about a problem. And I feel the need to remind them, I think you're overthinking it. And I think the simplest solution is probably the solution. But they already feel like they know, which doesn't explain why they're asking for help. And then they feel insulted that you would suggest something so simple rather than just humoring me. Do the simple thing. Don't argue with me. Just do it. And I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to work, but that information, knowing for a fact that you did what I asked you to do, isn't the solution, then I can make the next suggestion. But until you've done the very simple thing first, you're wasting my time asking me what about this and what about the sort of looking at, well, if that doesn't work, then what, is a waste of my time. Let's not worry about if that doesn't work, then what. Just do what I asked you to do. If it doesn't work, then I'll answer your question. Otherwise, customers will tie you up on the phone, and other technicians will do this to you as well. They just say, well, tell me what to do next. Well, there may be nothing to do next if what I told you to do fixes it. So why don't we start there? In the amount of time we've talked about it, you could have done it already. We'd already have the answer. And so you will run into this resistance from people who are asking you for help and then give you all the reasons why they're not going to take your help, and then potentially yell and scream at you. Now, this is a part of IT I don't think many people talk about. We talk about, here's a problem and here's the solution and here's the diagnostic steps. But when you're doing it remotely over the phone and you're dealing with somebody who is psychologically not in a state of mind that is conducive to listening and to following instruction because they're upset over their scenario, you have a choice on how you want to proceed with that. And my strongest advice to you is do not allow them to manipulate your mood. Don't get off the phone with that person and have it ruin your whole day, because it could jeopardize your business if you're short with other customers and they don't know what your bad mood is all about. They don't know nothing about that. They just came here for help and you're just being short with them, and you seem like you're not pleasant to be around. That's not good for your business. And one customer, if you allow it, can deeply affect your business on many levels with other customers. If you can't figure out how to disconnect from your customer's drama and realize it's not your drama and that you offered to help, they don't want to listen, it's not your problem. And they can scream and yell and they can act like a child. It doesn't solve problems. It's not going to upset me, and I'm not going to be impacted by it. And I'm not going to follow up with that customer either. I'm not going to call them and say, hey, how's it going? When that customer figures it out, they'll call me back. If they never call me again, it's not a customer I need. So this remains and always has been a challenge since I started the business. And I don't want to suggest that the opposite isn't true, because clearly there are customers that you will have that really appreciate what you do. They see a value in what you do, and they insist that you get paid. But I'll tell you something I found very interesting. I do work with this nonprofit organization, and even they have problems getting paid. And you think, wow, I've heard the long list of excuses on why customers don't pay their bills, but to accept a service and materials from a nonprofit organization and then not pay that nonprofit affects everybody that nonprofit helps. And it's a real shame of that selfishness, because what it does is the purpose that nonprofit organization exists is to help others. And if one entity siphons off enough time and material from the nonprofit and non-pay them, that one of two things can happen. One, the owner of the nonprofit gets fed up and says it's not worth this hassle I've done my part of the deal. We had a deal. I met my part of the deal. You didn't pay me, so this isn't worth it, and I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to change my career, shut the nonprofit down. I'm done with it. Or the nonprofit doesn't have enough money to continue to operate even if they want to, and all the people that the nonprofit was created to help don't get help anymore because they didn't get paid. The nonprofit didn't get paid. They are unable to. They have expenses like everybody else. So when you're an IT technician and you're not getting paid by a client, it's important for you to know that this happens across every industry. Restaurants with diners who dine in and dash, for example, or any sort of way people try to take advantage of other people. And whatever justification they use in their mind, if you agree to a contract, you have to uphold your end of the contract. You don't get to change the contract midway through. That's not how contracts work. You don't get to say, well, I've changed my mind. No, you've committed to it. Now, if you don't want to follow through with a new contract and repeat it, that's fine. In business, the whole point of a contract is to protect yourself legally. If we could trust each other, we wouldn't need contracts, right? The bottom line is we don't trust each other. Each person thinks the other one's going to take advantage of them, and so we have legal means by which that we can pursue a third party or a judge to determine who's didn't meet their end and what that's value is financially to get paid. So there's an inherent level of distrust built into this whole system. That's why contracts exist. And if we all trusted each other and people weren't trying to take advantage of other people, we wouldn't need the contracts and we wouldn't have anywhere near the number of court cases that we have. So understand that some people will take advantage of you and not even realize they're doing it, while other people are willful and malicious. Some people that's just how they are. They're going to say, well, I'm not forcing you to give me service for free. You're doing it. And you might feel compelled to do it because you think, well, if I make the person happy, they'll come back. Making the person happy doesn't guarantee they'll come back. I've gone out of my way to not raise rates for clients, only to have those clients find other reasons to get rid of me. And then I kick myself in the butt going, well, why year after year I should have had a rate increase for this client. And year after year I told myself I'm not going to increase the client's rate, even though I'm doing more work for them, right? There's only more data being created, not less. So as a marketing tool, as a customer loyalty reward, I won't raise their rate. So for 10 years, this customer paid me the same amount for 10 years. And I told myself, it's worth it to get a lower rate for a longer period of time than to raise the rate and have the customer say, well, you're too much money, we're leaving you. So instead, the customer found another reason to leave me. So I strongly advise you don't make your rates too low. At the end of the day, if you want to do something special on your rates for a customer that buys in bulk, right, a regular frequent customer, make sure it's a rate that you're not going to be resenting later on, because you only have yourself to blame for that. There's no guarantee, unless you have a contract signed, that customer is obligated to stay with you as a way of, look, in a perfect world, that's how things would work. I'm going to do this for you and you're going to do this for me. And we don't need to say any of this out loud. It's just human consideration, common consideration for one another. You've got bills to pay, I've got bills to pay. You've got a job to do, I got a job to do. Let's help each other out. And when you find the relationships of people that value you and they appreciate you and they pay you, that's where your focus needs to be, is on them. And when you have other people who just take, the sooner you identify the taker, the better your business is going to be because of it. Because as long as you allow that behavior to continue, they're costing you money. And I had a guy who didn't pay me one time for a job. He claimed he didn't have the money, but the phone he was calling me on worked. The electricity was on where he was at. Do you think he could have called the phone company or the electric company and said, I don't have the money to pay you, and there would have been no consequences? Of course not. They would shut off his phone, they would shut off his power. And these are big multi-million dollar corporations that are shutting down his phone for $50 a month that he didn't pay. I'm a small operator, one employee, self employed guy. I don't have millions of dollars, and I don't go after my customers like that. So therefore, customers see you as a option to pay. Like if I got bills to pay, I got to pay the electric bill. They're going to shut my power off. I got to pay my phone bill or I won't be able to send and receive phone calls. But the computer work I had done last week, that can be put off. I don't need to pay that person. Like hell you don't. That person is self-employed in this particular example, and you not paying them greatly affects their ability to stay in business. And if every customer they had was like you, they wouldn't have a business. So at some point, you've got to put your foot down as a tech and go, I need money. Or you need to shut down all service, just like the phone company would. If it's possible, like if I was doing, for example, server work, and a client wasn't paying me and it had got unreasonable. If a client doesn't pay you in a week or 2 weeks, these things happen. It's fully understandable. When you're going on 45 days and beyond for payment, that's when it's time to log in remotely and shut the server down, disable it. Just like the power company would do and just like the phone company would do, you should also be able to do the exact same thing. And like the power company and the phone company, there's often a reactivation fee that has to be charged, as well as catching up with your previous bill in order to turn service back on again. Well, because I don't deal with customers with servers, I don't have the ability to log in and shut them down, and I'm not real comfortable with it, even though that is a standard business practice that we accept from our internet service provider, our cell phone providers, our power and water, et cetera, et cetera. We know that this is how business works, and it's no reason to think any other business should not work and be respected the same way. But it seems like people think it's okay because things aren't being shut down, that it's okay to decide when they're going to pay you. If a customer wasn't able to pay you, they should have never hired you to do the job. It was irresponsible for them to take on a job that they can't pay for. And then you as a technician, self-employed, you have to decide if that customer calls you back, what do you do? Do you have them owe you more money? And if so, at what point do you say no? At what point do you just keep extending this customer credit? And then the customer calls and says, I'm going to have to file a bankruptcy. So I'm taking all this work you've done over the last 10 months that I haven't paid you for. I want to pile that into my bankruptcy filing. Well, you'll be right behind them filing your bankruptcy filing if you do that. So what I recommend is you offer each client a certain amount of credit, just like a credit card company. There should be interest and late fees, just like a credit card company, and there should be a credit limit. And depending on the customer, if it's a new customer, obviously you wouldn't extend any credit to a new customer. If it's an established customer and they're going through some rough times and you understand that, you don't have to be so extreme. But if this starts to become an issue where the length of time exceeds 45 days, you need to be a little more aggressive, a little more assertive in collecting that bill, which is to say, no more service. You need to either make a payment plan with me, you need to have payment in full. One way or another, there needs to be money for me when I show up. I'm not going to add on and increase your debt until I see something back from you. And if they're not willing to do that, you should not be willing to do the work. And it's tough. It's tough because they will tell you how tough times are and how desperately they need you and how without the computer they can't generate the revenue they need to pay you the revenue that you're charging them. Well, sorry, that's not going to happen. It's like telling the mechanic, I need you to fix my car, but I need you to give me the car without any payment so I can drive to work because I need the car to go to work. And when I go to work, I get paid, and when I get paid, I'll pay you. No. You need to pay me from the work you did previously, not from the work you're going to do. And when customers try to twist this, You need to recognize it, and that's not acceptable. I'm not doing work on credit for complete strangers or customers that are not regular customers. If I show up at your door and I do the work, I expect a check when I leave. And if there's an exception to that and I am taken advantage of, I will no longer do any work for that client ever again. And if that means I've lost the $125 or whatever the labor rate was, I will definitely make the customer pay for parts. I'm not giving any parts. Customer definitely has to pay for the parts. I don't sell parts. So at the most, I'm lost my time. Is it worth it to chase after the $125 or whatever the value of my time? Do I want to invest even more time going after this? Or is it faster to just cut it off or take it as a loss, put the customer's number on my block list so my phone won't ring when they call, and don't answer or return any of the customer's calls? Which one of those at the end of the day is going to make me more money or cost me the least in lost revenue? And sometimes just cutting it off and walking away is the way that you can minimize the loss. Because if you continue to pursue it and you continue to invest more time, you can even hire a collection agency and they'll take a percentage of it and let them harass your customer. That doesn't do much for your business. You're not building goodwill with your client that took advantage of you by, setting a, not that you don't have any right to. You certainly have every right to hiring a collection agency. And if that collection agency is going to split the amount with you, it's still more than you would have got on your own. And it's not you investing your time, it's the collection agency doing it. I don't like to get involved with that. If a person wants to behave that way, that's their choice. I don't have to choose to participate in it. I can chalk it up as a loss and as a lesson, and to know that that customer will never receive the value or benefit of my service ever again. And if they don't see that as a loss, then we'll both be happier, right? So what you should be taking from this discussion I'm having with you is that I'm not talking about certifications or experience. I'm not talking about technical details. I'm not talking about registry settings. I'm not talking about anything technical. This whole point of being a technician that I've been talking about since I started this broadcast has nothing to do with being a technician, technically speaking. We're not talking about the technical skill. We're talking about the skill of running a business. And so if you're going to be self-employed, regardless of what you're going to do, whether you're a chef that wants to open your own restaurant, or you're a mechanic and you want to open your own shop, you're going to have the same problems everybody who has a business has. How do I know how much to charge? Where do I get customers? What happens when I have customers who don't pay? And none of this has anything to do with the actual work you're doing. If you want to focus just on doing the work, don't be self-employed, because the self-employment of finding the customer, dealing with the customer, collecting the payment, paying the bills, that is 60% of what you're going to do throughout your day. 60%, more than half of your day will be running the business, and 40% of your time will be doing the work. So 60% of your time is arranging the work to be done, finding the work. Then there's support calls from after you've done the work, random calls from potential customers that might result in work. And then way down the list, there's the work. So when I get emails from folks and they say, hey, I want to be a technician, what certification should I get, or what tools should I buy? To me, you're not ready to start your own business yet, because the business side of things requires you to understand the psychology and the attitude that's required to get the work and to support the work you've already done in a manner that isn't costing you so much money that you can't make ends meet. If you're self-employed and you've got no other employees, that means only you can do anything that needs to be done, anything that's required. So you might have a customer that needs support, but you have another customer who's a new customer that needs help, and you can't do both at the same time. And if you're really good at what you do, you might have 5 or 6 or 7 other people also waiting on you. And this adds sort of invisible weights onto your shoulders. You may not even realize it's there until it gets removed, you may not be fully aware of just how much weight you're carrying around. In your head, you're like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and I'm running a business and I'm making a profit and things are going well. And then your friends are like, hey, we don't hear from you anymore. You're like, I'm sorry, I'm really busy. you know, um, and they think, well, geez, he's all about the money. I'm all about staying in business. I'm about helping as many people as possible. If I can help people and get paid, that's great. If I have nothing else to do and want to hang out with some friends, that's well and good. But if I have a choice between helping people who need help and getting paid for it, or going over to a friend's house and hanging out and just for no apparent reason, if there's people waiting for help, I want to prioritize them. And if that leads from one week to the next week and from one month to the next month, and a whole year can go by with a snap of fingers, and you poke your head out of your cave and you go, holy smokes, it's been a long time since I talked to some of my friends. Um, but you might also find yourself doing quite well in business. So then we run into this balance. And the balance is, how do we balance being able to get enough work and support, to do the support, to do the work that needs to be done, and then at the same time clock out? How do you clock out when you're self-employed? And it's a challenge that many self-employed people face, because the minute you clock out, whatever work you are not doing remains undone. So it's very hard to enjoy time not working when in your mind you still have that weight on your shoulders and it's all you can think about. So what's the point if you can't enjoy the time off than to say, you know what, I'll take time off next week. Let me just work through this stack. Let me just get this done. Customers don't like waiting any longer than they have to. I like getting paid. And if I'm not going to be enjoying the moment because my mind is somewhere else, there's no point in me doing it. I might as well just stay working. And as long as more work comes in, it's a vicious cycle that eventually can lead to burnout, where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. So you go from extremes. You go from, I'll take any job when you first get started, to I can't take on anymore and I need to just walk away from this. I am frustrated. I'm exhausted. I can't sleep. And, maybe financially it's doing really well. Maybe you're doing really, really well money wise. But at what point can you say, either one, I've got enough money, I don't need any more, or two, this is my problem, I have a hard time saying no to people who ask me for help. So you say, okay, I'll help you. And because I've taken on all these other things, I put too much on my plate, the person I agreed to help now starts getting mad at me. Why haven't you helped me yet? Well, you're on my list. I'm taking care of it. And when it finally gets done and the customer gets it back, a lot of times they expect you to, do the job for free because it took too long, or give them some kind of a discount, or they want you to do something now because they've waited. You've made them wait so long. So when I couldn't say no and I said, okay, I'll help you because I think, oh, I'm going to help this customer, and that results in the customer resenting me and feeling like they're not happy with the transaction and they're regretful that they asked me to help them. I have failed on numerous levels in that scenario, and so in those cases, learning how to say no is actually better for business. It's better to say no to a customer than to put yourself in a situation where the customer is waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and not hearing from you because there's other customers who are also waiting and waiting and waiting and not hearing from you. And you're just one person trying to balance it all. So again, you go from, I'll take any job because I'm just starting out, to now I've got too many jobs and everybody wants everything yesterday. And then while you're in the midst of all that, your phone rings from a job you did 2 months ago, and this person wants to pick your brain for an hour for free, doesn't offer to pay you. And it starts to build. Now, the art of running a business is being able to balance all of this. It's being able to know how much you can do, don't bite off more than you can chew, and if you do, stop fighting off more. Stop taking on new work until you have completed your commitments, however long that takes. And if that means you're losing work from clients, at least those clients have nothing to be angry with you about. They didn't, no financial transaction took place, no commitment was made that wasn't met. They might be disappointed and sad that you're not able to. However, I think given a choice of those two, hopefully this is another package. Hold on. Okay, so finally, the packages that I was waiting for have arrived. Or at least one of those packages has something I'm waiting for. I'm not sure how much of it that I'm waiting for has arrived, but I'll find out later when I get a chance to open the packages. So the reason I wanted to make this video today is I know quite often you'll hear me say that the difference between my channel and most of the other, like the really big tech channels, is that they are hobbyists and enthusiasts, and that what they are doing is not representative of being an IT technician in any way, shape, or form. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that it may be unintentionally deceiving to people watching. They go, hey, that looks like fun. I'd like to do that for a living. Well, if you want to make YouTube videos for a living, that's one thing. If you want to become a technician because you're inspired by delidding and overclocking and RGB lighting and liquid cooling, the jobs where you could get hired to do that are few and far between. The vast majority of IT jobs are in corporate America, where there's a lot of stress and a lot of work. Get it done quickly. And you've got to follow corporate policies and protocols. It doesn't matter what somebody on YouTube said. These are our corporate policies. We expect you to follow them. If you don't follow them, then you can look for work elsewhere. I don't care what some YouTube tech channel said about anything. This is the policies and protocols, and everybody follows them, and this is how it is. And if you don't like it, you can leave. And what really bothers me specifically on product reviews is nobody can really tell you the reliability of the products that they're using, that they might be recommending. Most of the people that are doing these product reviews and recommendations maybe have the product 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. And even at that, they're probably juggling it with other, because remember, they're doing reviews for a living. They're probably reviewing a bunch of other items. So they don't have their sole attention on one specific thing, and they're not living with it day in and day out. So we really don't know how reliable is the product, how good is the customer service, if needed. And without those two key pieces of information, how can you, in the right state of mind, in any state of mind, without any ethics or morals, suggest to some stranger that they should buy this product? Well, I bought this keyboard. It functions quite well. I like the way it looks. It seems to be a decent value for the money. You should buy it. I, how can anybody do that? So what you might find out is that the content creator was paid money by the keyboard manufacturer to review the keyboard, and that their opinion is not the same as somebody who spent their own hard-earned money that has to live with that keyboard day in and day out. And so these reviews are a bit disingenuous. The other thing I see on reviews, which I find interesting, is I'll see a lot of technical minutia mentioned. We talk about, well, this graphics card versus this graphics card with this many CUDA cores performs in this many, this process, in this application it shines, in this application it's not quite as good in that application. Here's all the numbers and stats, and it's just nerds for nerds. I've had people reach out to me and suggest that because I'm not playing that game with technical minutia, that I'm not a proper reviewer, which I find to be hilarious. Because if everybody who bought products were all engineers, they wouldn't need reviewers. Anybody who buys the product, regardless of what you do for a living, whether you're a YouTube content creator, whether you're a technician, whether you're an engineer, or you're a stay-at-home parent, your opinion matters. And it doesn't become disqualified or less valuable because you're not a technical person reviewing something technical. At the end of the day, we all want value for the money. We want our expectations met. We may not necessarily care what's the 4K data transfer rate of the solid state drive on the write cycles when moving 2 terabytes of data through an NVMe controller on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock. Most of us just care, does the drive perform within our expectations? Is it reliable? How much is it? Can I afford it? What's the warranty? Is it available, or is there a waiting list for it? Is this a new product where there's going to be issues that have to be worked out, or is this a tried and tested, proven product with a history of reliability? Or is it at least from a manufacturer with a history of reliability and a history of good customer service? These are ultimately the things that most people care about. The technical minutia is really just for nerds who are just addicted to data and don't really weigh the value of reality, which is we can measure how hot the computer gets. We can measure how fast the data transfers. But all of that is for people who have time on their hands and nothing to do with it. Most of us don't care how hot a computer runs, and we don't care what the precise data transfer rate of the drive is. We want to sit down at the computer and we want to use it, and we want it to work. And we don't want to have to call for service, and we don't want it to sound like a jet engine, and we just want it to work. And I think I speak for the vast majority of computer owners that they really don't give a rat's behind what the exact data transfer rate of their solid state drive is. They just care, is this thing running fast? Right? And their measure of fast may be not your same measure of fast. So when somebody comes on and says, hey, this is a fast drive, you might get it and say, well, I don't think it's that fast. And no differently than I can bite into a plate of chicken wings and say these chicken wings are not hot and spicy. And maybe I'm a professional chef, so, my opinion matters more than yours with regards to food. But it doesn't work like that. Because you can bite into those same chicken wings and go, those are the spiciest chicken wings I've ever had in my life. And I could be, licking my fingers going, I know what you're talking about. There's no spice on there at all. Does my opinion mean more than yours because I'm the chef? I don't think it does. I think everybody's opinion is equally valid. But there's a lot of deception taking place. And that deception is that when content creators are being paid by manufacturers to review products and they don't fully disclose that this video was paid for by, and I think that should be a requirement on YouTube. I think that anytime a company is paying for the content, that should be disclosed on the video so that the viewer isn't misled or deceived. So right now there's a lot of what I consider to be misleading and deceiving information being provided by tech reviewers where you guys, the viewers, have no idea what's happening behind the scenes, the deals that are being made, and the amount of money that's being thrown around. And one of the ways you can tell it's happening is if you keep seeing the same manufacturer time and again on certain channels. So somebody is consistently and constantly reviewing products from a specific manufacturer. I think it's safe to assume they're being paid to do that. Maybe not always, but probably more likely than you think. So, well, there can be a great entertainment value to these videos, and quite a lot of information can be conveyed that's accurate with regards to specifications. Most of it is provided by the marketing companies for them to just read aloud. Also, a lot of it really doesn't matter with regards to, well, the NVMe drive has a Phison controller. Who cares if it has a Phison controller? Like, if you're at that level where you care who makes the controller on your NVMe drive, that's not normal conversation that human beings have in a social setting, unless your social setting is just a group of nerds all sitting around talking about technical minutia, because there's something that you find appealing about that. The general populace has no interest. They have no interest in it. They just want the basics. Is it fast? Is it affordable? Is it available? Is it new? Am I going to be a pioneer with this product, or has it been tested and proven? Is it going to be loud? What are the negative consequences in reality of me using this? Is it going to function the way I imagine it would, which is fast, quiet, trouble-free, affordable, available? It's no good if it's affordable if they're all sold out. So I would very much appreciate if these large content creators were more honest with full disclosure about who's paying, because if you've got video cameramen and you've got editors, where's that money coming from? How much would you expect to get paid if you were a cameraman? How much money would you do it for? What if you were an editor? What if there were 2 cameramen and 2 editors? Now, add all that up. Where's that money? I guarantee that money's not coming from YouTube. YouTube doesn't pay worth a crap. You need about 1,000 views to make $1. Uh, yeah, I think that's about right. Though technically YouTube doesn't pay you based on views. YouTube pays you based on how many minutes the viewers have stayed on watching you. But on average, I think it's safe to say about $1 for 1,000 views. I think it's about right. I think that's right. Part of me is thinking it's $3 for every 1,000 views. Regardless, it's a pittance. It's a little teeny tiny amount of money. So it makes sense that you'd have to go to a sponsorship or companies, and the companies, you got a big audience. They want to buy that. They want to rent that audience from you. What's it going to take to rent your audience? So these people that you're subscribing to and that you're watching are effectively selling you without your consent, without your knowledge, and making videos that you may believe to be fully independent, when in fact there's no possible way. Unless somebody's a multimillionaire, if maybe your friend is Jeff Bezos and he's personally financing your YouTube channel, I don't think it's likely. Just to give you an idea, Jeff Bezos is now worth a new record. $172 billion is his personal net worth. And as far as I know, he has never, ever financed a YouTube channel. So apparently, if you have the kind of money to do it, they don't choose to spend it that way. So I very much want to keep my YouTube channel independent, and that's done so through your contributions and your support. And then when I do bring on a sponsor, it's a product I use anyway. But there's still the business side of things. So for example, with the Scythe coolers, I really like the Scythe coolers and I do recommend them. But if Scythe doesn't want to work with me to return, like let's say for example, as a result of my influence, let's say I've sold 500, let's reduce that, let's say I sold 300 Scythe coolers at $50 each. I mean, if you were Scythe, wouldn't you want me to continue that? And how would you incentivize me? Say, hey, what can we do to show our appreciation? Typically what I get from them is, we'll give you some free coolers. That's, no, a $50 retail cooler probably costs them $30, $40. That's nothing. It's nothing. And it doesn't, I can't call the electric company and say, here, let me pay you in coolers. It's not going to keep my internet service running. So what I want to do is use this opportunity to explore some other cooler manufacturers and ones that aren't the big brands. Folks like Noctua, they've spent so much money in marketing that it's a name you're probably familiar with. It doesn't really matter if they're the best product or not. They basically bought and paid for the opinions to be the best cooler. And there are other coolers out there that I am certain sell for less money and can cool just as well, if not better, that you've never heard of before. So if you're saying that this cooler is best because compared to all the other coolers you've seen YouTube videos on, which the vast majority of which have been financed by the manufacturers that you don't know about, you're not really seeing the full scope of every cooler. So the information you're being provided is true, but you're not getting all of the information. You are not getting a full disclosure. And I'm not sure how many of you are aware of that. It's not that the information you're being provided is inaccurate, it's just not complete. When people talk about how superior the AMD CPU is in value, they fail to mention the compatibility issues that frequent AMD with regards to RAM, the motherboard reliability issues that seem to plague AMD processors, as well as the cost of those motherboards being far more money for the same motherboard on an AMD platform than an equivalent motherboard on the Intel platform. So while the Intel CPU may be a little bit more money, the motherboard is less money, and the RAM, you can buy cheaper, slower RAM, which now all of a sudden, the AMD system isn't the bargain you thought it was. But if you just focused on the CPU and you ignored everything else, and you had this tunnel vision that the CPU is the end all be all of value, and the motherboard is not worth your consideration, and the RAM is not worth your consideration, then technically you're right. The AMD is the better value. But once you calculate in those added costs, reliability issues, compatibility issues, constant BIOS updates that continue to come out from AMD, the only reason that doesn't happen on the Intel side is we're on our 11th generation, 10th generation, 11th on the notebook side, the 10th generation of a platform that's been honed and optimized over many years. This isn't to say the AMD chip is bad in any way, shape, or form, only that it's still relatively immature. And it needs more time to mature if they want to reach that level that Intel is at. And furthermore, the cost of the motherboards is upsetting to me. Looking at an AMD board compared to an Intel board, they're often more money, which is offsetting whatever savings you believed you were getting on the AMD platform in and of itself. Then when people are like, well, you got to get that 3600 speed RAM if you really want it to perform well, you're going to be spending even more money. And you can't just buy any 3600 speed RAM. It's got to be compatible with the AMD platform. And if you just want to risk it, throw it all out there, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, you'll deal with it, so be it. But there's a reason why Threadripper sits behind me unfinished, as it has been for years, because I keep running into problems where I don't have those issues with Intel. Now, I'm also more familiar with the Intel platform. Because AMD's previous, FX processors were a joke, I didn't really spend any time with AMD, and so now AMD's come out with this whole new architecture, which in many ways is superior. No question or doubt about it. Superior to what Intel's doing in many, not in all ways, but in many ways. But AMD isn't selling me MSI boards. AMD is not selling me Asus motherboards or ASRock motherboards or Gigabyte. They're not selling motherboards. AMD's also not selling me the RAM. Now, if I could buy AMD RAM and an AMD board for an AMD chip, then I would expect certain compatibility to be guaranteed. But because different RAM manufacturers are not abiding by the same standards, apparently, or the motherboard manufacturers are not abiding by the same standards, I can pull an AMD system out here, plug RAM into it that has certain specifications, and go into the BIOS, and the BIOS will not see those specifications. I can take that same RAM out, we'll call it G-Skill RAM, plug it into an Intel board, and all the specs are read by the BIOS correctly. Now, what does this have to do with the AMD CPU? Nothing. This has to do with the motherboard maker and the RAM maker not being on the same page. And then when you find out you've got to pay more for that in order to accommodate what AMD's requirements are, I think you're going to find that all these people saying AMD is the better value is a very myopic and non full disclosure view of an isolated part. And if your computer was only made up of that one part, then what they're saying is true. But when you consider all the requirements of the other parts, when you get the big picture, instead of focusing in on this one item in the picture, it'd be like me telling you, isn't this a beautiful picture if you just look right here? Isn't that a great picture? Yeah, but what about all this crap in the background? Once the camera pulls away, I don't, there's a bigger picture there. There was more than just that one thing in the photo. And if you just focus on that one thing in the photo, it doesn't mean all the other things in the photo cease to exist. They're still there. You're choosing not to focus on them. You're choosing to ignore them. You're choosing to have a tunnel vision or to put blinders on, but that doesn't mean it stops existing. So this is the battle I face. And it takes me back around to, I was talking about the folks over at Tech Deals. One of the things, although I don't see them doing any technical work for paying customers, what I do like what they're doing is showing people where there are deals, tech deals to be had, right? Whether it's video cards or motherboards, and being honest about why would you buy this processor, that's here in the middle. If you're looking for a bargain, you would go down to the other side, and if you were looking for a high-end system, you go to this side. But nobody in their right mind would buy, in any circumstance, would buy the one in the middle. And I like that they kind of put it out there like that with that perspective. I think it's very refreshing. And I also like that it doesn't seem apparent to me that their opinions are being bought and paid for. That I feel like the information I'm getting from that channel is their personal opinion, as unbiased as it can possibly be, because we all have our own biases, whether we're aware of it or not. And it's also done with humor, which I think is very important in the industry. Tech is a very, very dry subject. And so to keep people interested, you've got to add some humor to it. But if you put in too much humor and not enough of the tech, well, you're going to get beaten up pretty badly by the commenters and trolls. So it's a delicate balance. And if you just do nothing but dry tech, you're going to attract a certain kind of audience which has no sense of humor and are very critical of every I being dotted and every T being crossed. And if they're not paying you, it's not worth their abuse to continue to pander to that specific group of people. Those people, to me, aren't the kind of people I want to hang out with in real life. They're not the highlight of the party. They are not the people that I particularly learn anything from. They're just critical, miserable people who are only interested in outsmarting you. And that's just no way to make friends. So if I don't appeal to that audience, I'm good with that. But they have a nice balance over there at Tech Deals. They seem to cover enough of the technical detail without going over the top. Guys like, Steve over at Gamers Nexus is an amazing tech journalist. The detail and the minutia is covered to levels I don't find anywhere else. But I also wonder, who's his audience, right? Like, is he only attracting people that can interpret this technical talk? Because if I show a non-technical person some of the reviews over at Gamers Nexus, they're going to ask me what language he's speaking. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to put into plain English and get to the gist of it, which is it any good, right? Is it going to meet an average person's expectations? And I feel like we're on the same page, like Tech Deals and I are on the same page. The nerd in me likes Gamers Nexus. I like that technical minutia, but then I have to think of a way to translate it. So if I come on my channel and I start talking about what I've seen, I got to figure out a way to say it in a non-technical way that is more approachable, using analogies so that anybody can digest the information, but at least the gist of all of it, right? Sort of the overall summary versus that technical level. I don't need to do the technical level. They've already done it. If you want that, you can go over to Gamers Nexus. Great channel, amazing work, great tech journalism being done over there. Not my goal to repeat what's already being done. They've already they're already doing it, and I can't imagine anybody doing it any better than Gamers Nexus does it. That's how good he is, in my opinion. Tech deals, again, they're sort of in the middle where they can provide you the technical information, but also provide information in a way that's more digestible for the average person. And so if you take that and then you also add into it real work, like behind me, I've got computers from, well, these two are not good examples. This computer is owned by the community. That's owned by all of you. This computer, I hope to make the new streaming computer. And I've got the 2080 Ti up here. And what I want to do is I want to replace the cooler with a black cooler because I've got that silver Be Quiet cooler in there, which I'm very impressed with, by the way. I want to get a black edition of the same cooler. That's part of the coolers that I've ordered. And the Silverstone power supply, I really like it. It's fanless, so it's 0 dB noise, but it's silver. And because this has a glass panel and we can look in it, I want it to be a black power supply. So I did get some power supplies in from EVGA, and I'm going to switch that power supply out. And I want to emphasize, is not a bad word about Silverstone. It's just a color aesthetic issue. I could take it outside and paint it, but I can't be bothered if I'm honest. And you'll see the side panel won't close. And that's because this case requires some pretty extreme cable management. I've got the cables sort of run the way I want them without running zip ties because I still have more work to do, so I don't want to do any cable management until the work is done. So I'm pushing the cables up against the motherboard tray and it's still not enough. You know, Fantex could have made this case so much better by removing this glass panel, which is all painted black anyway. Give me the lighter weight, non-fragile aluminum panel and let me use some screws so I can sort of suitcase it, right? You can kind of force it down and secure it with screws so the cable management isn't as critical. But because it just stays closed with magnets, if you so much as have a little tiny bit of cable pushing outward on this back panel, it simply will not close. And they don't give you, in my opinion, enough room back here between the back of the motherboard tray and the back of this lid or this side panel, because I don't have that many cables running. And yet nothing I seem to do has resulted in me being able to close this. So I don't expect to solve that problem until the power supply is replaced and the cooler is replaced. Then the cable management is going to be a real challenge, because what I have to do with the cable management, and the only reason it's worth tolerating this, is how beautiful this case is. So it's a little bit of a diva in that way. It's beautiful, but it's kind of a pain in my butt. So I will have to, the challenge is hide the cables from this side of the case as much as possible. But if I have too much excess, it's going to be really creative solutions that I'm going to have to come up with to figure out how to cable tie it individually to such a point that this will close with ease. So I'm not looking forward to that part, but this may end up becoming the new streamer. I still continue to have issues with the 3900X that's here that I'm streaming to you on now. I always have to start it twice. Sometimes when I start it, it doesn't initialize or post, which suggests to me I've got a RAM compatibility issue. The Threadripper build, I continue to run into obstacles, as you're well aware of, and as I have run into issues ever since I built it. And then the AMD Mini ITX system I built for my friend is being sent back to me because it's randomly freezing, and I believe it has a bad motherboard. If you recall that motherboard when I built it, I was trying to build the cheapest system possible for my friend in a Mini ITX form factor, and I decided to upgrade his case to the Leon Lee, the TU-150, which was a great upgrade choice because there's a lot more room to work in there, but it's also a bigger and heavier case. And I was looking for a discounted, bargain NVMe drive because the Intel drives had gone up in price. And I saw Gigabyte makes 1 terabyte NVMe drives for $119.95, $120. I thought, I'll try that out. So, but when I put, and this video is here on the channel, you can go back and watch it. When I put the gigabyte drive in, which I'd never used before, the whole system locked up, or it was really, really slow. And I was like, what's going on with the system? And I believe I falsely diagnosed it as just, look, I've used these motherboards from these manufacturers before, but I've never used a gigabyte NVMe drive before. It must be the gigabyte NVMe drive. And I grabbed an ADATA drive that was twice the capacity and twice the speed and put it in there, and it worked. So I falsely concluded bad gigabyte NVMe drive. Won't buy those anymore. But then I was building another system for another client, and I've got the Intel system, and I plugged in the gigabyte, the same drive that I had problems with, worked flawlessly on the Intel system, no issues. Now, this isn't an Intel versus AMD thing. We're talking about motherboard issues here. So I think I've got the problem solved by replacing the gigabyte drive with the ADATA drive. And I figured out my friend's getting an upgrade, lucky him. And I had some issues with the RAM, so I ended up going to 32 gigs of RAM instead of 16. Well, you know, it's for my friend, lucky him. He went from 1 terabyte of slow drive to 2 terabytes of fast drive. He went from 16 gigs of memory to 32 gigs of memory. And this cheap system I set out to build is getting more and more expensive. Now, I install Windows 10, everything works great. As far as I can tell, I'm 95, run the heat test, do all the standard benchmarks I do, and I ship it off. And he starts using it, and it starts freezing on him. And he feels terrible, right? He hasn't paid for the system. I've paid to ship it, I've paid to create it. He's like, I'm not to tell you this, but it's freezing on me. I say, well, I'm going to send you some new RAM. So $110 later, he gets new RAM, he puts it in, same problem. He says, oh, there's a BIOS update. Let me try the BIOS update. He puts the BIOS update on it. So I think it's working, and then the next day, no, it's freezing again. And at this point, I said, send it back to me. Here's my FedEx number. It won't cost you anything. Just send it back. And he's like, I really feel terrible about it. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything. I think the problem all along was that mini ITX motherboard. And I would send you another one, but I can't find any available for sale, at least none for under $200. So what I want to do is I want to make a diagnostic video out of it. I want people to see here on the channel exactly what's being experienced. I want you to see that it's an AMD system. I want you to see the RAM I'm using. I want you to see firsthand some of the frustrations. Now imagine if you were a computer technician and you sold this computer. My pricing is very similar to Dell or HP. I'm not some specialty manufacturer that charges a premium like some of the big gaming PC manufacturers, whose names you're all familiar with, and you might drool over their systems, and they're $4,000 or $5,000 to buy one of these rigs. It's very rare that I would build a rig that's $4,000 or $5,000, and regardless of the value of the parts, I still don't make any money. I don't make money I don't sell parts. So the cost to build a system is always the same, but that may start requiring some change in my process, because now that system that I built has to come back, and it's going to require more of my time. So imagine you're the customer, and imagine you paid for these parts that I recommended, and I put it together, and you waited because I'm so busy and I'm trying to balance all these things. You finally received it, and now it's freezing on you. Now you have to send it back to me. Are you likely to buy another computer from me again, regardless of how quickly I can resolve it? It's an inconvenience. So, in the meantime, I'm not happy about it, because now instead of moving on to the next computer I've got to build, I have to take care of the one I previously built and get it figured out and resolved. And because it's an intermittent problem, I can't click here and click there and make the problem happen. You just sort of have to start running software and wait until it occurs. Those are very difficult problems to resolve. And normally I would just get another motherboard, slap it in there, be done with it. If it passes, it's fine. But because these motherboards are so hard to get right now, I won't have much other choice but to send it back to the manufacturer, which is going to be a difficult RMA to explain. Yes, it works, but then it freezes. And then, well, what RAM are you using? What model number? Well, I've used 2 sets of RAM. What CPU are you using? What cooler are you using? What BIOS version do you have? What power supply are you using? And you have to kind of go through this whole sort of routine before they go, fine, here's an RMA number. And hope they send you another board and they'll just put your board on a bench and test it and go, nothing wrong with it. We're sending it back to you because this is a test that requires hours and hours and hours of testing to get it to freeze. So if you're not making much money in order to be competitive, like your customer's calling you and saying, how come you're so much more than Dell or HP? Then the reason is because you're providing this kind of service. But if you're not more expensive, if in fact you're cheaper or at the same price, then the amount of profit that you made will be quickly eaten away during any support call. Or in this case, having him ship that computer back will be $100 and me shipping it back will be $100. Plus the RAM I sent already was $110. So there's already $310 in added expenses. And I don't charge $310 to build a machine. I'll charge $125. And even that's just to pay for the shipping to ship it to the customer anyway. So now I'm backwards. I'm under by $200. Whatever the RMA is going to cost me to mail it back, it's probably 20 or 30 bucks to mail it back. There's more financial loss that comes out of profit. So if you're going to build computers, you need to build in enough profit to accommodate when this happens. And if you run into certain products, like in my example, I'm talking about AMD-based systems, are causing me more support issues, that in order for me to sustain a business model, to stay in business, and to keep my customers happy, and to keep moving forward without constantly being pulled back, I stick to what I know, which is building the Intel systems with these specific parts that, 49 times out of 50 work perfectly right out of the box. So if I have one bad, one recall, if you will, after 50 machines, that's a pretty good ratio. But if I'm getting 3 machines for every 10 that I'm building, which is currently happening with AMD, it doesn't make me an Intel fanboy and it doesn't make me anti-AMD. I'm simply sharing with you the financial numbers. And eventually, if I'm focused on a specific AMD build, this case with this power supply, with this motherboard and this chip and this RAM that I know works, then I can probably get there with AMD. I can get to that 49 out of 50 being okay. But I don't even do that with Intel. You'll see I use different motherboards all the time. I use different coolers. I use different video cards. I use different power supplies. I use different RAM, and they just continually work. I don't have that freedom with AMD. That's been made very clear to me. So in order for me to stay in business, as unpopular as it may be to talk about the downside of AMD, because again, everybody's focused on the chip. This has nothing to do with the chip. This has to do with the motherboard manufacturer and the RAM manufacturer. And until they get on the same page like they have with Intel, it's important for me to understand what consequences financially it may hold for me to make those recommendations to a prospective client. And again, it's not just about my cost of support. What about losing the client? What if the client just says, seems to me you don't know what you're doing. Seems to me you sold me a system that didn't go through property quality control, and it doesn't matter if they, it started off perhaps comparing my price. Well, let's see, how do you compare to and go to Best Buy and buy a system. So yeah, but Best Buy system isn't customized to you. It's not as upgradable or repairable. It's not going to be as powerful. It's not going to be as quiet. You just can't customize it like that. And when push comes to shove, if you can get a customized PC for about the same price as an off-the-shelf pre-built, why wouldn't you? And then they get it and it starts crashing on them and they go, this is why. I wouldn't have had this problem if I'd have bought a Dell. Okay, well, you might have some engine problems in your Ferrari that you wouldn't have had if you'd have bought a Chevy Spark. But that doesn't mean those two things are equal. Comparing a Chevy Spark, which is a little econo box, to a Ferrari high-performance car, if they were both priced within a reasonable, why wouldn't you pick the Ferrari? Well, it may be that it's just too much car for you to handle, that you don't appreciate all of the handcrafted workmanship that's gone into that car, and that it's a waste to give it to you. And in that case, buy your Dell and buy your HP, because you're that kind of person that will be happier with that purchase with some peace of mind that there's this big corporation behind it instead of some guy like myself. Dell doesn't, it's not just Michael Dell, right? He's a bunch of employees that can help you. And if you see a value in that, don't let anybody tell you you're wrong, because that is a value to some people. I don't see it that way. I see it as a big corporation that's there to take every penny I've got, to nickel and dime me every opportunity they have, to sell a lot of bloatware and unnecessary stuff loaded on the computer that I have to take off, that they are utilizing my resources without my permission and selling me the cheapest thing they could put together at the highest profit they could make. But that's me, right? That's why for me, custom build's the only way to go. But not everybody thinks like that. And it doesn't make it right or wrong, but it's a waste of my time to try to convince somebody who's already made up their mind. So then you run into guys like Anthony Remus. Now, Anthony builds high-end overclocked machines, which are certainly going to be more prone to requiring support. And these machines are all going to use top tier parts that all have to withstand the ability to be overclocked for a long period of time. They've got to be able to dissipate the heat and remain reliable. And even with all that, they still will crash over time. It's more or less inevitable. So Anthony, when he prices a system, has to add in enough labor cost for the future support needs that this customer is going to require for the length of warranty. So if Anthony wants to build, let's say, a $2,500 computer, and he needs to do all of the extended testing and experimenting in order to figure out exactly how much he can overclock that specific processor, knowing that you can have 10 of the same processor, exactly the same, and they will all have different overclocking limits. Each processor has to go through the same very timely process of testing and tweaking to figure out where its limit is. Then you've got to keep it cool, which means you've got to spend more money on a cooling solution. And if it's a $2,500 computer and you're going to warranty it for, let's say, 3 years, well, that motherboard or that cooler may not be made by the manufacturer a year and a half from now. So you better buy some extras to keep them on your shelf at your office for two reasons. One, that your customer doesn't have to wait for you to receive it after you've ordered it, right? So you got your computer back, needs a new motherboard. I'm going to RMA the board. You're going to be down 2 weeks, minimum 2 weeks. Customer's going to say, not accepted. I need that fixed now. Well, you go to your shelf, you grab the extra motherboards or that you have, and you replace it. And then when you RMA this one, you put it back up on the shelf for another warranty, another day. How much extra do you think you would have to charge to cover those expenses, plus the time and, in many cases, shipping the computer back and forth? It's $100 each way on average. The motherboard's probably going to set you back $200 to $250 because these are high-end motherboards for overclocking. Plus, he needs spare liquid coolers, spare RAM. So your $2,500 computer needs additional labor for the testing required to find the overclocking limits of each chip. And then for a 3-year warranty, to have all the spare parts required to repair it in an instant, I think it's safe to assume you need another $2,500. So your $2,500 computer with labor, time, and the warranty is probably about $5,000. And that's not going to be getting you a yacht anytime soon. I think that's more or less a bare minimum that you can still do all of that and walk away with a profit. My business model is so aggressively priced that if a machine comes back for any reason, I've immediately lost any profit. And the only way that the business model works currently is from the revenue generated from the YouTube videos. Without the YouTube videos, right now, my current state of business would not financially be sustainable as I'm running it. I would have to either shut it down or completely change my pricing structure and policies with regards to support and warranty in order to be able to maintain a level of revenue I could count on every month and to guarantee that my revenue would not be jeopardized because of a warranty issue. So there you have it. That's sort of the gist of running the business. And I want to look very quickly at some of the contributions that have been made while I've been talking. We'll give some folks some shouts out here. Let's take a look. John Blaker contributes $1.99. Psycho Killer 25 with a £2 contribution. OG Gaming contributed $10. Tom Jackson with $7.77, who says, "Here's to common sense, Carey." Greg Bentow contributed $4.99 and says, "Happy holiday weekend, everyone, and cheers." Thank you, Greg. Irving T, watching us in France, has contributed €2. Pat Mullins with €2. And let's see who else we have. Madi. I see Madi's there in the chat room. Madi OL's contributed $5 and says hello. Leonard has contributed $9.99 and says hello from Wisconsin. Good friend of the channel here, Michael Dane, has contributed $10 and says, "Happy 4th of July, Carey. Here's another $10 for your hamburgers and hot dog and Coke." Have a nice weekend. Thank you, Michael. Stephen Conlon with a £10 contribution. Thank you, Stephen. And we've got David Starbuck, he contributed $20. As always, David, thanks for your continued generosity and support. David says, "Hey, Carey, I hope you have a great Independence Day. I'll be enjoying mine at the gun range with friends. Hooray for the Second Amendment." Agreed. Wish I could join you. Tani Almorathi has contributed $1.99. Thank you for that. Don Melitas with a $7.99 Australian contribution says, "Cokes are on me." John Young has contributed $5 and says, "Thanks for your wisdom, Carey." Right on. Thank you, John. Steve Conlon again with a very generous contribution. He's contributed £50. Wow, very nice. Thank you, Stephen. It was very generous. Chris Chris Moole has contributed £5 and says, "Here's just a little something." Very kind. Sorry, I'm butchering your last name, Chris. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your last name. Kevin Arsenault watches us in Canada, has contributed $20 Canadian and says, "Thank you for what you do." Well, thank you. Daniel Pexton with a $2 contribution says, "Have a Coke on me, Carey." Paul Ware has contributed $2 and Rick Hubbard has contributed £3. Thanks, you guys. Tony Wallow, good friend of the channel, contributed again here, $19.99, and there was an Amazon gift card the other day that was very generous. Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate your support and your generosity. Speaking of which, Frankie B. Frankie just submitted $100 via Super Chat, which is very generous. And he says, Frankie says, "Carey, I know what you're saying. I've been there and I'm still waiting for payment. I've had to say no more until you pay me what you still owe me." Yeah, it sucks. I hate doing that. I absolutely hate doing that. But there is some sort of peace of mind in knowing, when I talk to like this nonprofit organization that does really good work for kids, that they encounter the same non-payment issues, which just blows my mind that somebody would do that to a nonprofit. Thank you, Frankie. Daniel Navarro has contributed $2. He says, "I'm always enjoying your lives." Thanks, Daniel. Daniel. Make sure Daniel's a moderator in here. And Madi, again, with another contribution for $5. Gordon Ung. I see Gordon in the chat room. So Gordon is with PC World Magazine. He used to be the editor-in-chief of Maximum PC Magazine. And if you see Gordon, say hello in the chat. If you see Gordon, that's who that is. If you go to PCWorld.com, you'll see videos where Gordon makes the best videos. Like if I had a film crew, he's making the videos I wish I could make. They're funny, they're true, and they're not all just technical jibber jabber, though he's really good at that too. Gordon has contributed $5. He says, "Carey, have you ever told an annoying customer to get a Mac because it's a great way to get rid of them? And I don't work on Macs, sorry." Gordon, when I tell somebody that they should buy a Mac, I mean it sincerely. I don't do it to get rid of them. I'm saying, what's it going to take for me to make this customer happy? So many years ago, back in maybe 2003, 2005, was a customer who bought a system. In fact, I don't even know if I built a system for them or it was a system they had, but they had it just filled up with viruses and malware. and they brought it to me for cleaning. And I cleaned it. It took a long time, got it all cleaned up, charged my, it was probably $100 or something. They had dropped it off and left it with me, and then they came back and picked it up a couple days later. And within a week, I got a phone call saying, you didn't fix it. It's still doing all these pop-ups and ads. I'm like, well, no, no, it was clean and you've just reinfected it. And, programs like Malwarebytes, the premium paid version, do a great job of preventing most infections. But back then, there was no real good paid solution that I could say this is going to take care of it. And they said, well, we paid you to do this, and from what we can tell, you didn't do it. The problems that we brought it to you for, it still has. And I'm like, well, I fixed those problems, and now you've reinfected the machine because you don't have safe surfing habits. Well, how do I surf safely? Well, you take a college course at community college. Nothing I can explain to you quickly, but you're not surfing safely. But don't I have antivirus? I'm like, yes, but your antivirus doesn't exempt you from making wise decisions or exempt you from education. You don't get to buy an Audi, which is advertised. No, I'm sorry. You don't get to buy a Volvo, which is advertised as the safest car you can buy, and then think, I don't have to learn how to drive because I drive a Volvo. Like, they wouldn't guarantee, Volvo would never guarantee you're not going to get into an accident, that you couldn't possibly be killed in their car. But there was this common thought that if I have antivirus, I can just do whatever the hell I want without consequences. Isn't that what the antivirus does? Is it protects me from myself? No. If you want to be protected from yourself, buy a Mac. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean it in a very helpful way. So anyway, this customer says, they're not listening. They're like, how could I have reinfected it that quickly? Like, I don't know, it was you. You got kids using the machine, whatever. Somebody's doing something. So I'll tell you what, in the spirit of good customer service, bring it back. I'll clean it again at no additional charge. But I won't do it again. This is the last time I'm doing it. Go through that, clean it again, more viruses are removed, system's clean, give it back. Phone rings again. You're still not fixing this machine. I said, look, you really should, if you're not going to learn how to surf the web safely, consider Linux or Mac. Well, Mac is expensive and I can't afford it. I go, well, I can't afford to keep cleaning your machine for free. So if you don't want to have to deal with this anymore and you don't want to learn, Mac would be a perfect platform for you to invest in. Buy a used one. Or go to Linux. Linux is completely free. Well, how do I do that? Well, that requires even more education, which I don't do that. There's no money in it. But there are people that can set you up with Linux, and it will prevent these problems. So you either need to educate yourself or use a different platform. But I won't do this again for free. Not a fun conversation to have, but I never, ever recommend it as sarcasm. I don't say you should buy a Mac unless I truly believe you would be happier with it. But it's a good question, and it's good to see you, Gordon. Thanks for supporting the channel. I appreciate that. Kuro Yukihim has contributed $5. Zdravko Frankovic has contributed 25. I can never remember HRK what that denomination is. Thank you, Zdravko. Sherry Oliver with a $2 contribution. Appreciate that, Sherry. Gary Tatum with a $20 contribution. Hey, Gary, thanks for that. Lloyd Hedrick has contributed $20. Thank you, Lloyd. That's very generous. He says, happy 4th to all. Enjoy a Coke. Ricky B has contributed $10 and says, thanks for the honesty. Well, thank you, Ricky. Thanks for supporting the channel. Patrick Manny with $2 and Matt Power with $2. Mike Yazzie with a $20 contribution. So thanks so much for all of the kindness and support. Chris Kingen has contributed $5 and he said, everything you've said is right on the money. Patrick says, what happened to my moderator status? It is my goal to turn everybody in the chat room blue. In my perfect world, everybody would be kind to each other. We would leave out your religious beliefs and your political beliefs out of this chat room. and that you won't engage people that are baiting you for arguing, that you will simply choose to ignore them, and that if somebody is coming in being vulgar or intentionally offensive, that you're looking out for me and my community or our community and removing them or hiding them from the channel. When a moderator behaves in a way that violates these rules, that's set as an example, whether it's done by mistake or with intent, I remove the moderator status. And one of the things that bothers me and concerns me the most are people who feel like they're entitled to be a moderator. Like it's a decision that you get to make. It's a decision that I make. And when I remove moderator status, it's because you've exhibited a behavior that I wouldn't accept from a non-moderator, and that I've entrusted you. By turning you blue, I've given you some power because I trust you. And you have done something that has caused me to say, oh, I don't want you representing me if you're going to talk like that or act like that. Now, maybe you were in a mood, or maybe you made a mistake. I don't care. You might accidentally hit somebody with your car. They don't automatically get better because it was a mistake. I didn't mean to hit you with the car, so you can heal now. Because certain things happen, there are certain consequences. But I can tell you this. I appreciate all of my viewers, and the viewers that continually express support and kindness for other members of the community, regardless of their contributions financially. Those are the people I want to be blue. And if I remove your blue status, it doesn't mean it's gone forever. But I don't want anybody thinking they're entitled to it. That's the exact opposite of what it is to be blue. And as long as you remain kind and supportive in the chat, I will notice it and I will turn you blue again. You're going to have to be patient. There are consequences for your actions, intentional or unintentional. So I want you to understand that I consider it the best honor I can bestow upon my viewers is to turn them blue. And it's something I don't take lightly. I'm not just turning people blue willy-nilly. And I want you to know that because you're blue doesn't mean you're going to be blue forever. And if it gets taken away, doesn't mean it's going to get taken away forever. Relax, continue to be yourself, and before you know it, I promise you, you'll be blue again. And that's nothing more I want. I want you to be blue. So everything's going to be okay. Just because you're not blue, nothing's changing for you. So relax. And thank you for being a part of the community. And thank you for being supportive and kind to others in the chat room. Did I just see Anthony Remus in the chat? Remus Computer Solutions, there he is. Anthony, have you got any of those Threadripper systems delivered yet? The dogs are hungry. Yeah, it's a little past dogs' dinner time. Gordon says he learned about the Windows 10 deal from PC World from my channel. It's his own company that's doing it. That's hilarious. Although it was John. It was the editor-in-chief, John Phillips, over at PC World. For some reason, I was thinking Gordon was the editor-in-chief. Weren't you Gordon? Weren't you the editor at one point? Because I remember, so John Phillips was the editor-in-chief at Maximum PC Magazine many years ago. And then he moved over to PC World. He was like the Pied Piper, because soon after, other people from Maximum PC started moving over to PC World. PC World must be a better platform to work for, I guess. I don't know. But I thought for sure Gordon was the editor-in-chief. So I can't remember what Gordon's position is there. They're both excellent, though. Both John Phillips and Gordon Ong were two of my favorite editors-in-chiefs over at Maximum PC Magazine. Not that the other folks were doing a bad job, but just more relatable to my style. So again, what I'm trying to do, and I hope you'll join me, is creating a safe place on the internet where I want everybody to feel welcome here. And so if I see any behavior that's criticizing somebody, if somebody says, "Hey, I just built a machine," and they're sharing their excitement with you, and I built it with this CPU and this motherboard and this graphics card, please don't say to them, "Oh, why did you choose that graphics card instead of this one for $10 more? You could have done blah, 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 blah." Don't crap on their parade, man. If you don't have something nice to say, just don't say anything. Instead, try saying this: "Do you like it?" They didn't build it for you. They weren't looking for your approval. They were simply sharing their enthusiasm and their excitement that they built their own machine. And all you have to say is, "Do you like it?" They could say, "Yeah, I love it." You say, "Well done, Welcome to the club. Now you know what it's like. You know that feeling of what it is to build your own machine." Don't criticize what they built. That's a terrible thing to do to another person. Just be supportive and kind. And if you can't do that, then don't say anything at all. Because what I want to create here, and what we have created here, is a place where people of all genders and all ages and all religions, we can all come together of different backgrounds and experiences. And we're not here, as far as I'm concerned, to prove how much smarter we are than anybody else. We're not here to challenge each other. There's enough of that going on around the internet. We don't need more of it. We're here to show how nice we can be. Because regardless of your age, sex, gender, religion, doesn't mean you're not a jerk. So if you're a jerk, I don't want you here. But if you can show some kindness and be supportive, or if you can just not say anything at all, then you're welcome here. And I want you to be a part of this community. And I want this community to be 10 times larger than it is. Because that is an aberration of the internet, to find what I call a diamond in a trash can. To me, the internet's a big dumpster fire. But if you dig through that garbage, you might find a diamond. Somebody could have thrown away something very, very treasure, have a lot of something that's worth a lot of value, that has a lot of value. And so in the internet dumpster fire, I'm trying to create this little diamond. And those of you who find it and who see the value in it, I hope you'll stick around. And I hope you won't try and break the diamond or tarnish the diamond or poison others in the community with negative thoughts and spit venom at them. Again, that's everywhere else in the dumpster. There's no shortage of that. But there is a significant shortage of kindness and support. And I'd like to think, at least here on my channel, we can find like-minded individuals who enjoy technology, who don't need to flex, don't need to worry about him. If you want to impress me with your kindness. Impress me with how supportive you are. You will very rarely impress me with your knowledge. Just saying. I don't judge people based on their knowledge. Gordon is a smart guy, but most importantly, he's not a jerk. That's why I like Gordon. He's a good guy. And as are all of you in the community, not just Gordon. But it wouldn't matter to me what Gordon's position is, what he does for a living. It just so happens he makes videos that if I had a budget and I had a camera operator, he makes some really good, poignant videos. He's also got the podcast over at PC World where they talk about what's going on in the industry, which is also a great source for accurate information. And I do believe that there is no hidden corporate entity paying for that other than the publication house. So I feel like you don't necessarily get the myopic view of some of the other YouTube content creators that are, as I mentioned before, getting paid by manufacturers to review their products. And they don't fully disclose that in most channels, and I think they really need to. But now I'm just repeating myself. Let me just look back through the chat room, see what else we've got in here. Sonic 1000 has contributed $2 and says, "Thanks for everything you've taught me." Well, you're welcome, Sonic 1000, and stick around because there's more to learn. And you guys teach me too. I just want to look and see if I had any response from Anthony on those Threadrippers. definitely need to bring Anthony back on the show and follow up with him. Remus Computer Solutions, as I mentioned, he's building custom built systems used in CAD workstations and other production facilities that need that overclocking to increase productivity. And he was showing on his LinkedIn page, he was building like, I don't know, 10, like 10 Threadripper systems he was putting together. See a message from Gordon saying, yes, Carey, why does everyone think they have a right to tell you how to spend your money? Gordon, I'm not quite sure that's the attitude of the content creators. I think what they're saying is, I'm not putting a gun to your head and forcing you to buy this piece of crap. I'm just taking money from the manufacturer to tell you how wonderful it is, and what you choose to do is on you. So I sleep well at night. That's what I believe the mentality is, and that mentality doesn't sit well with me. The idea that you're not causing an influence that's resulting in a purchase and absolving yourself of any liability or responsibility or accountability really disturbs me, because very rarely in life can you do something like that and not have consequences. I remember shopping in Fry's Electronics, and one customer was telling another customer that they shouldn't be buying this router, they should be buying that router because that router over there was better. And it was all I could do to not say what I wanted to say, which is, if you're going to take advice from this complete stranger, ask that stranger to give you their name and phone number, so that if you have any problems as a result of following their advice, that you can call them and have them help you resolve those problems. Because I'll bet you, if you said to the person, hey, can I have your name and phone number so I can call you if I have any problems from following your advice? They'll probably say no. Well, then don't take their advice. I run into business people. They're like, hey, I just sold this $10 antivirus package for $400 today, so I'm having a good day. And I'm like, how do you sleep at night? Like, what's wrong with you, man? You're a jerk. I'm just a businessman. I didn't force the customer to give me $400. They decided that. They don't know the value. That's not my fault. You got a problem. And I'm like, no, you got a problem. You're ripping people off. Hey, it's not my responsibility. It's not my responsibility to watch out for how they should spend their money. If they don't know any better, why is that my responsibility? They voluntarily handed the money. I'd be an idiot to turn it away, and you're a terrible business person if you think otherwise. So welcome to my world. And so I see that with YouTube content creators. I see that attitude, which is, I'm not forcing anybody to buy it. And they absolutely refuse any responsibility. And there's no enforcement, so there's no incentive for them to change their attitude. Companies are paying them. They're making a good living. They're getting good subscriber numbers, which results in more companies wanting to pay them. And they think they're infallible. They think what they say is more valuable because companies are paying them and companies aren't paying me. So therefore, what he has to say or what she has to say has more value because they have more subscribers. I Again, no matter how good of a chef somebody is, doesn't mean that what they make you're going to like. Chris at Goblinet, Goblin IT. Sorry, I see what you did there. Ask Remus Computer Solutions about the best settings for a Threadripper and your 3900X RAM to run stable. At most cases, enable the profile settings and it'll work stable. Chris, I don't want to go into the BIOS and modify anything. My preference is to keep everything automatic on Threadripper. As I mentioned, there's all this focus on the chip, right? It's an amazing chip. Okay, but what about the motherboard and the RAM? What about the fact that this cooler is now the fourth cooler I've had to put on Threadripper in order to find something to quiet it down? Whether we had the Enermax cooler that had the gunked up thing, that had the recall, and they sent me a new one, or you had that Arctic Freeze piece of crap cooler. At least I think it was a piece of crap. Now I got this one, and I can't put it in because the RAM is too tall. So now I got to order new RAM. But yeah, it's a great chip though, ain't it? Look at it. Let's just take it out and stare at it. Let's talk about the reality of what you're hearing online and what you're reading online. They talk about the chip. Okay, well, what about this board? What about the RAM? What about the noise levels and the lack of the assortment of coolers that you have with other chips? You know, the Threadripper requires specific cooling, and it's the only chip on the market that does so. If you've got any other AMD or any other Intel chip, you will use a standard cooler, of which you've got hundreds to choose from. If you buy a Threadripper, your choices are severely limited. And as I try to solve one problem, such as it's too noisy, let me pull the cooler out, I'll get this air cooler. Now I got a new problem. My RAM's too tall, I can't fit the cooler. So I got to order new RAM. And I can't put the cooler in until I put the RAM in, because if I put the cooler in without the RAM, in order to put the RAM in, I got to take the cooler back out. But yeah, it's a great chip. It's a great chip. Do you like that one, Gordon? I felt I was channeling Gordon right there. Why is Control L find? F-I-N-D. If I'm in Outlook and I want to do a search, I should hit Control F. Gordon did this whole rant on that a couple of years ago. Funniest thing I heard, because he was right. And he was really sounding angry. You could feel his anger. F-I-N-D. I'll take Control F, Control I, Control N, Control D. Any of that can mean find. That's classic. Was Carey going to do any work tonight? Well, Don, I was waiting for some parts to arrive, which, I was interrupted with some deliveries that I hope are some of the parts I need. In fact, I'm certain. I just don't know which. Like, I might have the RAM that may have arrived. I don't know. I may have the one of the coolers I ordered that can go in here. I may have the little Wi-Fi kit that I ordered for the Gigabyte. I can check that. I think the kit for the Wi-Fi adapter for the Gigabyte H370 board is here. I think. No, it isn't. So one of the things, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's this one. As I'm opening up some of these boxes and looking, it's reminding me of some things I was going to tell you. But now I think it's this box that has the Gigabyte kit. Now, you don't have to buy the Gigabyte kit to add M.2 Wi-Fi to some of their ATX and micro ATX boards, but you do sort of have to buy the antenna, you got to buy the card, and then you've got to buy like the PCI slot cover that has the holes in it to mount the antennas to. So it's like 3 separate pieces, and I'm going to cover that on a future video. Yeah, it did arrive. Here it is. This was really hard to find, by the way. And let me just take a quick look in the chat here. David Smith's contributed £5. He says, thanks for everything, Carey. You're the best. Hey, David, thank you. Hugh Wong with the $2 contribution. As always, thank you, Hugh. See a good friend of the channel, Luke Greenia, in there, and Chevy Arthur. Always good to see you guys. Anthony Remus says, on Threadripper, I primarily use the Noctua U14 TR4 cooler because of the bad selection of coolers. I think Noctua was teasing a new TR4 cooler recently. I don't know, still. Anthony Remus says, I, against better judgment, used an Intermax one time, but I always recommend an EK loop. So EK, it's a custom water cooling solution, you have to sort of put it all together yourself, or the Noctua U14s, which are ugly, ugly, ugly. Okay, so this, you probably never seen one of these before, and I had a hard time finding it. But this is the upgrade kit. If you wanted to add Wi-Fi to, let's see, I should have a couple of boards here. Let me move this one aside. Watch out, boys. Let's move this build aside. And let's put this build up here for now. Just ignore the dust. It's not there. You don't see the dust. Okay, so on this board, right here, right where I'm pointing this, there's a little M.2 slot, but it's very shallow. And the reason that's there is for adding a laptop-style internal Wi-Fi adapter. So with this motherboard, and there are other motherboards, not just this one, you can add Wi-Fi to it a number of different ways. You can plug in a USB Wi-Fi device, as you could on any computer, to add Wi-Fi. We can use one of these slots to insert a Wi-Fi PCI Express card. Or we can add what is essentially a laptop Wi-Fi adapter internally onto the M.2 connector. Now this M.2 connector is not a storage connector. It can only be used for Wi-Fi and nothing else. It's very shallow. It's only about 1 inch long, well, where the standoff is. And these Wi-Fi cards are really tiny. And so what you need to have in order for this to work is you need 3 components. You need the card, you need the antenna, and then you need basically a slot cover where the components of the antenna will screw onto here on the back. Now some motherboards that have that M2 will also have little cutouts in the I/O shield for optional Wi-Fi antennas. This I/O shield does not have that, but there are other motherboards where the I/O shield, you'll say, I wonder what these are for. Well, that's for running the wires with the connectors to the back of the board, and then you would connect your antennas onto those connectors, or your antenna, may not be antennas, depends on the Wi-Fi adapter. So this kit right here is designed specifically for Gigabyte, though there's no reason it wouldn't work with any motherboard manufacturer that provides you that M2. Now you can individually go online and you can buy just the Wi-Fi card. It's in this little box. And you can buy just the antenna. So here you can see I've got some antennas, and you see they've got to screw onto something on the back of the computer. But how do I get the wires? Actually, I think these are just the wires. So in this little box, this is just wires. And on one end of the wire, it connects to it just kind of pushes on like a button, you know, like push button. You ever had clothes that had buttons that clicked when you pushed them together? So one end of this cable has a little tiny end on it, very, very tiny, if the camera will pick it up. And there's going to be 2 cables in here. And they both connect onto the end of the Wi-Fi adapter, that little tiny Wi-Fi adapter. It's about this big, that's going to plug into that M2 slot. The other side, this part that has screws, will go through something on the back of the computer to lock it down and secure it so that these 2 brass things are sticking out of the back of the computer. Like I said, you may have to buy a special PCI slot cover with holes, or you could just take one and drill holes in it. That'll work. And then, of course, you would then screw the antenna onto those fittings I just described, and you've got Wi-Fi. It seems like a lot of work. Like for me, just plugging in a USB Wi-Fi adapter is a lot easier. Just plug it in, you're done. Or plugging in a PCI Express Wi-Fi card is super easy. So just to give you an example of what that looks like, and again, there's all different shapes and sizes and speeds and prices. The more you spend, typically the faster it goes. There's a level of convenience involved, right, with how many USB ports you've got and things like that. But here's a USB Wi-Fi AC 1200, and you see how tiny it is. This is the whole Wi-Fi adapter. This is everything. That's the card, everything. Just plugged it into the USB port of any computer, and you've just added Wi-Fi to it. If your laptop's Wi-Fi stops working and a shop wants $200 to fix it, just ignore it and buy a $12 or $15 cheap USB Wi-Fi adapter, plug it in, you're done. If new Wi-Fi comes out and you want to upgrade, unplug it and plug the new one in. Anybody can do that. If you want to go a little fancier, you want higher performance, you don't want the thing sticking out, then you can buy a PCI Express internal Wi-Fi card. Notice the small connector on it. Notice this has small connectors on the board. But the small connector can also fit into these large slots as well. It's kind of a waste of a large slot, but if that's all you got available, it'll plug in, even though you'd think, well, look how much bigger it is. You just simply only utilize the first part of it, but you won't be able to use it for anything else. It's possible to do that. It's designed that way on purpose, obviously. So if we wanted to add Wi-Fi to this computer right here, I can do this internal kit, explained already. I can do this internal PCI Express card, or I can just get a USB adapter like this one, although USB adapters could look like flash drives. They could look like a lot of different things, but generally it's an antenna that usually has some wires that goes down to a USB plug, or it's built onto the USB plug like this one. Depending on how much you want to spend and what sort of performance you need, you see the numbers on that one. You know, not the best numbers, 300 plus 867, but not terrible either, considering what it's only AC 1200. But if you don't have a super high-end router, you're not going to really take advantage of that anyway, the higher numbers. So lots of things to consider when it comes to Wi-Fi, and I will be making a video on this, going through this in more detail, specifically for the H370, because I have a customer who wants that. And I thought that'll be a great video to make, to go through that, and it won't be like a 2-hour video. It'll just be strictly to the point on adding Wi-Fi options to a desktop computer. Anthony says that retrofit kit exists. I've never seen it in stock anywhere. Oh, I had to do a little research to find one, but I found one. Yeah. See, he knows. That guy gets it. Blue Dog Ron has provided a Wi-Fi kit on Amazon that says available from these sellers, so Amazon doesn't have it. There's one for $30 plus $10.69 shipping. That's a fair price. Thank you for that link. The wires are microcoaxial. Thank you, Chris. I do believe that is the correct terminology name. Lloyd says they are SMA connectors. All right, well, take the technical jibber jabber out of it. They're connectors, that's what they look like. I don't really care what they're called. But I appreciate, they do have a name, but I don't want to intimidate people with technical jargon. It's all very simple to install. Now, if you want Bluetooth, you're not going to get Bluetooth from a generic USB Wi-Fi adapter. You can buy specific USB Bluetooth adapters. When you get the little internal card that's intended for laptops, those generally do have Bluetooth built into them as well. In fact, I'm not aware of one that doesn't. That doesn't mean one doesn't exist. But every one I've ever installed, those little tiny ones, such as what comes with the kit, that's going to have Bluetooth on it. Putting Bluetooth on a desktop is kind of weird. Bluetooth is primarily designed for portable computers, laptops, smartphones, tablets. So when I see somebody with a computer with a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, I think, that keyboard and mouse was designed for a tablet. It was designed for a smartphone, maybe even a television. It wasn't meant to be used on a PC. And then, of course, they go, so I'm not supposed to be using it? I'm like, no, I'm not saying you're not supposed to be using it. It's just that Bluetooth requires pairing. It requires a Bluetooth adapter. And if you would have just bought a standard wireless keyboard and mouse, like from Logitech or anybody who sells them, it's on a different frequency and a different connection, and you don't have to provide anything additional. You just plug your wireless adapter that comes with the keyboard or mouse into your computer, and no further configuration is necessary. There's no delay. Sometimes Bluetooth has this weird delay between, you know, when you click something and when something happens. Or getting audio to synchronize, like Bluetooth headphones, there's often an added delay. So the lips aren't synchronized with the audio because of the delay inherent in Bluetooth. But it also depends on what version of Bluetooth. I think they're at version 5 now. So the older the version, the more that delay is prominent. And the newer versions seem to reduce that quite a bit, but it's still there. Like, I'm pretty sensitive to it. All right, does anybody have any final questions for me? I'm going to wrap up today's video. We're at about 2.5 hours into the stream, and the dogs are going to have to eat here very soon. So I just want to take a minute to address any questions you might have, specifically regarding the topic of the video, which is about things you need to know if you want to be an IT technician. We talked about the psychology of it, the attitude of it, the business side of things, and then, of course, the final bit, which is actually doing the technical work. Now, if you have any questions in that regard, I'd be happy to answer those. Oh, listen to you. You're not dying. You can wait a couple more minutes before you eat. Alex says, this is a great channel. I've been a subscriber and watch your videos for almost 3 years. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you, Alex. We'll make sure we make you blue in here. It's very kind of you. Anthony says, I hate it when clients ask for Bluetooth on their desktop because Windows, for whatever reason, just doesn't like it as much as our mobile phones. Creatives tend to want it often. I feel your pain. Eddie Sawyer says, Carey, I just bought a Lazy Susan from your Amazon store from your link. Thank you, Eddie. I think you'll be very happy with it. I'm thinking I'm going to start selling branded Lazy Susans. I can't imagine how many Lazy Susans I'm responsible for selling at Amazon. That was unexpected. I'm trying to solve a problem, and putting a Lazy Susan on when I'm filming makes it easier for me to rotate the computer around. But it turns out it makes it just as easy to work on the computer when you're not filming. So I'm thinking of getting some Lazy Susans branded with my logo that I can sell. David Starbuck has contributed $20. He says, please feed the poor starving dogs. All right, David. Are you guys hungry? Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens if I ask them if they're hungry. Are you hungry? Is it time for dinner? Where's your brother? Where's your brother? Go get him. I bet if I open this door, he'll start. Oh, there he is. There he is. You ready for some dinner? Is it time? There you go, buddy. Tasty. You ready? You hungry? All right. You can see he's just wasting away. He's all skin and bones. If he doesn't have that dinner, starving to death. All right. Thank you for enjoying my clickbait dogs. Thomas Tidwell's contributed $25. Thomas, thank you so much. Uncle Carey's computer turning device. Yeah, that kind of puts it into reasonably understood terms, right? Luke Greenia says, Carey, I deposited the usual $20 in your PayPal, my friend. Have a great night. Thank you, Luke. Thanks again for all of your continued support and contributions. I'm able to do so much more now than I could before because of contributors like Luke and others like David Starbuck and Tony Wallow, who are giving me the freedom to have some independence to not only buy some extreme stuff just to sort of measure the practicality of it or to just have a little fun, but also to do videos more often as um, an alternative to just filming my work, right? Because there's so much work and some of it I'm not allowed to film. So for me to spend more time making videos, I spent all day yesterday at the studio getting more electric work done. Basically, every light fixture in the place is being replaced. We just took down the kitchen lights. I didn't like the kitchen lights. I said, can we take them down? I got a feeling, based on what I've seen, that they're not up to code. So we pull the lights down, and what do we see? Here's what I think happened. I think when the house was built in the 1970s, I think they had a big fluorescent light up above the kitchen because they were doing that in the 70s. Fluorescent lighting was the thing. And it looks like, because the space is like fluorescent light shaped, and it looks like they took the fluorescent light down and they put 3 individual light fixtures up. Each one holds 2 bulbs. And I was like, let's see how they did that. Let's pull these old light fixtures down. And sure enough, when we pulled them down, there's a rough hole in the wall about yay big, and the electrical cord is just pushed through. There's no junction box. That is against city code. Anytime you're connecting 2 electrical wires together, it has to be in a junction box. And the reason for that is not only for safety, but also to diagnose any problems. How do you know where the splits are, or where the connectors, where you're splitting off of that cable? It could be anywhere throughout the house. How would you find it if there's a short? So not only is it a potential fire hazard if there's a short, because it's just out willy-nilly, maybe in the attic with all of the insulation, which is probably fireproof, but I can assure you it can still catch fire. So if you're an electrician, you're looking for the junction boxes. Those are where all of your connections are being made. So when somebody cuts corners and they do it themselves, which is what I think happened here, I don't need to spend the extra money with the junction boxes, and they have to be mounted, etc. So we're not having an inspector come over. Nobody knows I'm doing this. It's my house. The door's closed. I'm going to put these lights up. These are the same kind of people that can't be bothered to get some painter's tape. And so they just run the brush when they paint the ceiling, and they end up painting the edges of the light fixtures to the point that when we pull the light fixtures down, some of the drywall stays glued to the back of it because the paint is glue in this particular instance. And it looks terrible because they've painted it. There's spots of paint all over it. And then what we did is we went to put recessed lighting in. But the recessed lighting, it's in cans. And those cans are about this deep. Unfortunately, once we cut the holes, we realized we only had about that much room. And if we had put the can in there, the half of the can would stick out, which is not anything you want to see. So a trip over to the hardware store, and we found some lights. They were $25 a piece. But then they had these other lights that were on clearance for only $8 a piece. And they're shallow, but they wiggle. It's kind of hard to explain, but the light itself, instead of having a can that you can change the bulbs in, these have permanent LEDs that are not changeable, and they're on a swivel. So you can kind of tilt them one side or the other, which I don't see any reason why I need that, but they were only $8 a piece, and I needed 4 of them. So I got 8 for basically the price of little more than what one would have cost me. I got lucky there. And then, of course, junction boxes still have to be used, and the person I have doing the work has been an electrician for over 20 years. He knows city code. He knows general code as well, and he makes it look very easy. So the new ceiling fan is up. That was a challenge because they had a 3-inch junction box in there, and they used 4 nails to secure it. It was a real pain to get out. And they put a standard 4-inch junction box in there, which I could not put the new ceiling fan up because the new ceiling fan, the spacing for the screws to mount it are assuming you have a 4-inch junction box. Again, I didn't even know there were 3-inch and 4-inch junction boxes. It's not what I do. So my friend came over, he did all that, and we put more recessed lighting in the studio area to make it brighter in there. There's still more work that has to be done because I'm not going to just ignore the other half of the house. Even though that won't be part of the studio, I'm not going to do half of the house. I feel like all the electric stuff, light fixtures, outlets, all has to be looked at because most of it was done by the homeowner who had no skill in that area and was looking to save money by doing it himself. This is long before there was YouTube to show you how to do things, and because it worked when he was done, he figured he did it right. There's a number of rooms where there are light switches that don't appear to do anything. Well, it turns out there are outlets that are switched on and off with the switch. And it's standard practice if you have an outlet controlled by a light switch, that outlet is mounted upside down, right? So that when somebody looks around the room, they go, oh, that outlet's upside down, I wonder why. Well, because that outlet is controlled by the switch on the wall. Because there's no light fixture in 2 of the rooms, if you want to add lights, you've got to plug in a lamp, and then you turn the lamp on and off with the switch on the wall. Now, that's very common out here in the West, especially in homes built in the 70s and 80s, that homeowners, for whatever reason, said, yeah, we're going to spend $100,000 to build the house, but we don't want to pay you the extra money to put a light fixture in some of the bedrooms. So what I have to have my friend do is I've got to have him rewire 2 of the rooms, because what the homeowner did at some point was put a nice ceiling fan in the master bedroom, and the ceiling fan is probably spliced in somewhere in the walls to one of the circuits. I don't know where. So the light switch on the wall doesn't control the ceiling fan. It's got pull cords. You got to pull the light on, pull the light off. Now, I don't mind that it's got pull cords, but the switch on the wall, if I leave the ceiling fan light on, I want to be able to hit the switch on the wall and have the light go off, just like a light should work for a bedroom or any room. And currently, the switch is still wired to an outlet, which has nothing plugged into it and probably never will. So I want him to make the outlet normal, and I want him to rewire the ceiling fan so that it can be controlled by the switch. And they did the same thing in another bedroom, and then the other 2 bedrooms have no light fixture at all, and I have to decide if I want him to cut a hole in the ceiling and do the same thing. It's money and time, and all of that's keeping me from being in the studio. On the other hand, it should be done, in my opinion. If it was my house, this is what I would do. And if I do it, it increases value to the house. I don't think anybody ever says, I wish the room didn't have a light fixture. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys ready for cookies? All right, they're ready for cookies. Let's see. Let's see what we've got for cookies. Hi, Jimmy. Hi, buddy. You being a good boy? What's on your head? What's on your head? Your face? Is that where you keep your face? All right, let's get you some cookies. Cookies. I've got cookies. You want cookie? You want cookie? Can I have a foot? Oh, you give me both feet. Or you can have a whole cookie. How about this guy right here? You want a cookie? You want a cookie? You're such a good boy. See ya. Bye. He's gone. I don't know what Costco puts in those milk bones, but the dogs have a serious addiction to them. There's a main room in the house, and it had a wall plate, just a blank wall plate, covering up a hole in the wall. And I took it out, and there's wires in there, and I reached in there to see what those wires were, and I felt electricity. Like I wasn't shocked, but I could feel, oh, there's power in that. I don't know what they go to. And then there's a light fixture that they didn't cover up that just has wires coming out of the ceiling of the main room of the house. Like you walk in the front door and there's wires. With the switch on the wall to control it has been covered up, but the hole in the ceiling hasn't been. And I said, well, I want to do something with that. And I was at the hardware store and I was looking, it's not a place that I would normally spend any time in that room. And I thought maybe a ceiling fan would look good up there, but nobody's going to be underneath the ceiling fan to feel it. So I saw this. Let's see if I can find it. I think I have a picture of it here. Um, hmm. I think. So I'm changing all of the light fixtures. But what we ended up doing, what it looked like before, is it just had wires coming out of the ceiling. And they just left it like that. And the switch that controls that, they took the switch out of the wall, and then they covered the hole the switch was in with a blank wall plate. So I'm like, what's behind this blank wall plate? I see there's wires. And my electrician goes, yeah, those wires control that that ceiling where the wires are, the outlet or whatever you want to call it. So it's like, all right, let's go to the hardware store and see what they've got. And I found this little thing, and we put what's called an Edison bulb in it, if it will focus. And we put the switch back. And I thought, it's completely unnecessary. It has nothing to do with me filming there, but it adds to the home value and it looks nice. It's a nice place to be, right? And so, so between the recessed lighting, the new ceiling fan, and then having the electric gone through with so much stuff that was so poorly done, I'm surprised that that house hasn't burned down over the years because the electric work is dangerous. And I'm not comfortable being in that house until every room has every switch, every outlet, and every light fixture replaced. And in the case where there are two ceiling fans, I want the ceiling fans removed temporarily. I want the wiring inspected and then put the ceiling fans back if everything's okay. So you got to feel bad for my electrician because the work I'm asking him to do is not difficult. It's not like I'm asking him to solve a complicated puzzle. It's just very tedious. Changing electrical outlets is very boring, and this house has about 50 of them. And like I said, trying to figure out which outlet's controlled by the switch isn't rocket science. And they're making it a point that when they change the outlet, and it's controlled by the switch that they're flipping it upside down, so I won't have to guess anymore, and neither will the next person that goes in there. There's little things like that. But there's probably 30 switches, probably 50 outlets. And then as far as light fixtures, there's 1, 2, 3, 7, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So there's 20 light fixtures, not including the garage. And I'm replacing all of them, except for two of the ceiling fans. The two of the ceiling fans are still fairly new, but I am very concerned over how they were installed, electricity-wise. But then, how often do you have to do that? Like once it's done, it should be good for the next 20 years. So I hope to get that wrapped up the end of this week. Hopefully tomorrow, I hope to get it wrapped up. It's a lot of work. We're making progress. We are getting there. And like I said, once it's done, it won't have to be done again. Is there 200 amp service in the house? Probably not. Your electrician is a saint and needs a bonus. Oh, he got a bonus. Yeah, I gave him some money. He goes, well, you're paying me too much. I'm like, just shut up and take it. I said, I need you to come back. I don't want you to leave and not come back. So I want some assurance you're coming back to finish this. He's really good. He's also 6'9". So you can imagine what he and I look like together. It felt like a scene from The Princess Bride. I was like, you better behave or I'm going to find a new giant. He's a big dude. But he's a sweetheart. He's a super nice guy. But not somebody I want to fight. Somebody I will choose to outrun. Squish me like a bug. Yeah, don't even get me started on the appliances. I also made sure that we put a couple of dimmers in. The dimmer switches are $24 a piece just for the dimmer switches, and I needed three of them. So I got $75 in just dimmers. But it's important that the lighting I use is bright enough to film, but at the same time, I need to reduce it for because it's a little too bright to just be in the house and have those lights on. So I needed a dimmer put on there so it can be, within normal range of brightness for living in, and then a whole nother range of brightness for filming in. And then that should, I think, not require me to add any additional lights. I won't know until I try it, and I'm not ready to bring the equipment back out yet because, as you can imagine, this kicked up a lot of dust and debris cutting into the drywall and running the wires. And so I'm not going to even try and give it a good cleaning until he's completely done. Because, what's the point? He's just going to make some more mess tomorrow. But once all of that's done, then I'll work on getting it clean. And then I can lay the area rug down. And then I can go find myself a workbench. And then I can start filming. So getting closer. If there's days where you see I'm not live, it's probably because I'm over there working. That was a good one, Lyle. Proud of you, boy. Who taught you that? Some folks are talking about how many amps the service is in their house. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure my electrician can tell you. I don't have a clue. All right, guys. So I just want to see if anybody had any questions with regards to what I invited questions to earlier about running the tech business, and I'm not seeing anything. So did I catch everybody's contributions today? David Sherlock contributed another $20. Thank you, David. Thanks for all of your support and contributions. And a shout out to Thomas Tidwell, Paul Ware, Hugh Wong, David Smith, Sonic 1000, Chris Kingen, Mike Yazzie and Matt Power, Patrick Manny, Ricky B, Lloyd Hedrick, Gordon Ung, Gary Tatum, Sherry Oliver, Zdravko Frankovic, Kiro Yuki, Yuki, Kuro Yukimi, Yukimi. Thank you. Madi and Daniel Navarro, Frankie B. and Tony Wello, thanks you guys. Rick Hubbard, Paul Ware, Daniel Pexton, Kevin Arsenault, Chris Moole, Stephen Conlon, John Young, Don Melidis, Tenny Aromadi, David Starbuck, Stephen Cotton, Michael Dane Leonard, Madi Yoel again, and Pat Mullins, Irving T, Greg Bentow, Tom Jackson, OG Gaming, Psycho Killer 25, and John Blaker. Thanks so much for all of your support and contributions, and for all of your kindness and consideration in the chat room to each other. What is my opinion on other tech YouTubers? So I don't want to talk about that. And the reason I don't want to talk about it is it's a bait question. It's a question that no matter how I answer it, others will use that against me. It's just not good form. So if I'm talking about a specific tech YouTuber, it will be in a positive way. If I have anything negative to say, I won't say anything at all. And so I won't talk about other tech YouTube channels or any channel on YouTube that I don't thoroughly enjoy and endorse. If I don't talk about it and I'm not mentioning it, you can read into that. But I'm not going to badmouth anybody. I'm not going to fall for that trap again, even if it's not what you intend. Some people do that on purpose. They just like to stir a pot. And so I'm not answering those questions. But I will answer any technical related questions you've got. Can I build you a Hackintosh? No, I don't build Hackintoshes. Are the ceilings tall in the studio? No. Um, my electrician, he's 6'9", and um, he can reach up and install the ceiling fan and doesn't need a ladder. I need a ladder. He doesn't need the ladder. So the ceilings, I'm going to guess, have got to be at around 9 or 10 feet. They're not high. In my home, all the ceilings are vaulted. They go up 20 feet. I think it's probably 20 feet, which I like. It makes the home feel bigger than it really is. Donald Strickland has contributed $19.99. Hey, Donald, thank you for that. Chevy Arthur says, Carey, you is okay. It's not what the doctor said. Thanks, Chevy. Or Chevy, depending on how you pronounce it. Daniel says, thanks again for your live and enjoy your Independence Day weekend. Thank you, and you do the same. Hope everybody has a safe, happy 4th of July holiday here in America, in the US of A. What kind of warranty do I give my builds and parts of your builds? Well, I don't sell the parts, so the customers buy their own parts and the warranties are whatever they are. And there's only so much I can do with support when customers are in another state, when they're hundreds of miles away. In general, it's a 1-year warranty. That's pretty industry standard for computers. And there's very little I can do unless they ship the computer back to me. But I do my best, if there's something simple. Of course, I don't want them to ship the computer back. It's expensive and it's time consuming. So for the most part, people understand that I'm not really selling them a computer. I'm just building it. And your warranty is as if you built it yourself. So you're going to have your warranty on your motherboard, your power supply, your RAM, as anybody else would if they were building it themselves. You're just paying me to build it for you. But I will do what I can to help you. If you're close, if you're in the Phoenix area, it's a 1 year warranty. But if you're out of state, there's really not a whole lot I can do. I don't know what anybody could do other than, mail it back. Ledman says, I'm 6'6" and I don't need a ladder in my house. Yeah, well, I wouldn't know. Don says, Carey, how long have you been on the tools for? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question. How long have you been on the tools for? How long have you been on the tools for? Sorry, I just can't interpret what you're asking. The UK and the USA celebrate the 4th. Is that true? I didn't know that. Do you charge to source parts? I don't sell parts. So I don't know any other way to say it. I'll give you a list of parts that I recommend to meet your needs and your budget, and where you choose to buy them is up to you. I recommend Amazon or Newegg, but you can purchase them and source them anywhere you want. All you're paying me to do is to build the computer for you. I don't know any other way to explain it. I do not sell computers. Um, I used to sell computers, but I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that for a few years now. I'm tired of people price shopping and saying, well, how come you charge this and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just done with it. It's like, there's taxes that have to get filed, quarterly tax statements. In Arizona, labor is not taxable, so I don't have to worry about city sales tax. And so that's all paperwork I can avoid, and it's all the nonsense of people trying to take advantage or, you know, basically, if you bought the parts and built it yourself, you have the same warranty. Except that, obviously, you will have the ability to reach out to me, and you will have the ability to ask me questions. But unless you live in a reasonable driving distance, there's nothing I can do. So therefore, I'm not going to sell you the parts. I'm not going to listen to the complaints about pricing. I'm not going to listen to the government telling me I have to follow and collect sales taxes on their behalf and not get paid for it. There's no incentive for me to sell parts. How long have I been at tech? My first paid tech job was in 1991. Prior to that, tech was a hobby. So as a tech, I've been in tech since the 1980s, but I wasn't paid until 1991. So to be a professional, you have to be paid to do a job. And to be an expert, you've got to be paid for a job for like 7 years, I think, for an American court to consider you an expert. So 1991 to 2020, so it's 29 years. Mateo has contributed $5. In your video, I don't know what cable you install. Can I please email you about the video? I bought all the parts from your links. I don't understand your question. My videos detail every cable close up. I would suggest you look at a different video. You can also go to techguy.org for free technical support. I don't do personal tutoring. The videos are there to show you all that detail so you don't have to ask. And there are numerous videos, and you might need to look at a different video if some of the live videos they don't get the clean close-up shots and well-lit shots that I have in some of the edited videos that were done a year ago, 2 years ago, even 3 years ago. But the good news is all the cables go on the same. They haven't changed. So if you look at some of my build videos from 2015, 2016, I think you're going to see clarity in there that should resolve any concerns that you have. But in short, you would be in a long list of people trying to reach out to me, trying to grab my attention, trying to ask me questions. And a $5 contribution isn't going to cut it. Like for me to take that kind of time to walk you through personally, I'm going to have to set aside an hour. So we can do that if you want to pay for it, but I don't think it's a good value for you. And I've got so much on my plate right now because I hate to say no. I really should just tell you no, but that's the reality of it. The information is there on YouTube. You have to put a little effort forth and look for it. Whether or not you bought parts I recommended or not, that's on you. That's not on me. I don't owe you anything beyond what I've shown. I wish I had more time and I wish I could hold everybody's hand, but clearly I can't. It's just one of me. Robert Malovich has contributed $5. He says, do you think a socket 1200 will make a major difference in performance? Well, I'm about to find out. One of the future builds coming up, I've got a board that arrived last week that is a socket 1200 that I'm going to be using maybe next week or the week after, depending on my schedule, depending on how things move forward or progress. So I've got this board that came in, which is a socket 1200. This is the Z490 Aorus Elite. And I've got a 10700K Intel CPU. I wanted a 10900K, but I can't find them for sale anywhere. Or if they're for sale, they're like $200 over MSRP. I think it's a $600 chip, and they're asking $800 for anybody who's got one. So I also had pre-ordered an AMD 3300X so that I was a part of the original purchasers of chips. And apparently Amazon oversold them and said, hey, we're not going to be able to get your chip until next month. Do you still want it? And I said, yes. And that month has come and gone. And I said, you know what? Just cancel the order. I'm not interested anymore. The 3300X chip is $120. I bet you in 2 months it'll be under $100. So I'm not going to join the sheep and join in on waiting in line and paying too much to get a brand new chip that, everybody wants whatever the latest and greatest is. I don't see why I should wait in line and pay top dollar when in a couple of months, look at the price of the 3900 and the 3950X AMD CPUs when they came out. And look at what the price is today. They've dropped by more than $50 in just 2 or 3 months' time. So it went from hard to find and being put on a waiting list and paying top dollar to you can just order it for $50 less and you don't even have to wait. You just had to wait a couple of months for the hype for all the people who had to be first, let them go first. I'll be next. So I don't know that there's going to be a big performance difference in the socket 1200. It's probably just more of the same. I'm not expecting, it'll be slightly faster, but I don't think it's going to be night and day or, it's not going to be massive. David Starbuck says, now I want a socket 1200 system, and I just built an X570. Time to warm up the credit card. Yeah, it never ends. It never ends. Yates Network has contributed $2.55. Says, thank you for all the wisdom today. It put me at ease. Right on. Thank you, and thanks for supporting the channel. and for your kind words. I appreciate that. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for me today. Thank you guys so much for joining and for all of the support and kindness, again, not only to myself, but to each other. And I don't know if I'll be back in time enough tomorrow, depending on how things go. I'm hoping to be back at the other location working on the electric. But if that doesn't pan out for any reason, then I will go live. If I don't see you before then, do please have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. I know many of the 4th of July celebrations and effects, the shows have been canceled. They don't want people close together during the whole pandemic. But I'm sure there'll be something on the TV we can watch, which I'm fine with. If I don't have to leave the house, I'm happy anyway. So I don't have a problem with it. I hope you don't either. I'll see you all again very, very soon. And until then, bye for now. I have to find an outro graphic. I need my sister to make me some more. These are starting to feel like I've used them all. I need fresh graphics. All right, guys, here we go. Bye for now.